Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Writing Diary Complaints and Being Seen by Iron Man. Chapter 31. Peter Parker is 8 years old and lives in Queens. His parents died when he was very young. He was adopted by his uncle Ben Parker and his Aunt May. Among the many people named Peter Parker, his age and identity match Lin Feng's diary. The only candidate for the information point mentioned in, so I infer that this should be the only protagonist of Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Jarvis projected some information about Peter Parker. It is still so small, which means that it is the same as Lin Feng's previous speculation. In other words, if it is according to the normal situation Lin Feng said, then this Gwen spider should not appear, or even if it does, it should be the same as Lin Feng's previous speculation. The age difference between Peter Parker can't be such a big difference. Tony Stark touched the mustache on his chin and said, according to Lin Feng, these two are a pair and are destined to be tragic. If Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man, Gwen will die, but if Gwen becomes Spider-Man's universe, then Peter Parker will become lizard people. They should be the kind of lizard people I understand. It doesn't sound like a good person. Jarvis, strengthen the monitoring of Peter Parker in the future. If he has the tendency to transform into a lizard person, or maybe, report to me as soon as possible. Tony Stark said. Okay, sir. Jarvis silently recorded one of Tony Stark's missions. After all, it is an AI computer, and multitasking is a matter of course. And poor little Peter Parker, without knowing anything, has been labeled as a dangerous person by Tony Stark and the future S.H.I.E.L.D. What was even more shocking was Gwen Stacy, because Lin Feng clearly revealed her identity, Gwen Spider. Others may not know what Gwen the Spider means, but she knows it. It's her name plus Spider-Man's spider. In other words, although Lin Feng has never seen his own appearance, he has already judged his true identity based on the design of his suit. After she became Spider-Man, this was the first time she met someone who knew her identity. What shocked her even more was that she had always thought that after being bitten by a spider, she would become Spider-Man, which was a special encounter. But now it seems that this is destiny, and there is destined to be a spider in this world. Shaw. And this Spider-Man can be himself, or the guy named Peter Parker, or he can be a black man, a black woman, a pig, or even a Tyrannosaurus Rex, or a refrigerator. This directly shattered her cognition. What she thought was a coincidence turned out to be fate. And she even knew that her future lover was actually a man named Peter Parker. But no one she knew was named Peter Parker. Could it be that a child of 7 or 8 years old would actually like a younger brother in the future? Moreover, if he had not become Spider-Man, he would have been thrown to death in front of Peter Parker in the future. If he had become Spider-Man, he would have killed Peter Parker who had turned into a lizard man. What kind of fate is this? This feeling of having just started her wonderful life, and having her lover arranged, and even the ending arranged, made her feel uncomfortable. I thought I had control over my destiny and my life, but it turned out that it was all a predetermined outcome. But before she could think about it, the contents of the diary were still being updated. But if it's a Gwen spider, that would be interesting. Could it be the Gwen spider from the Spider-Man parallel universe? That's really my favorite, but in the end I have to give it to a second-generation black man like Miles. I'm not willing to accept it. Okay, another black Spider-Man appears. Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. and Tony Stark are a little numb. There really is a black Spider-Man. It seems that Spider-Man must appear. It's just about who becomes Spider-Man. This Spider-Man, I feel like it is similar to a god in myths and legends, or a godhead. For example, the position of Thor is found in the East, the West, and even in many various gods. It's just that people are different. Agent Hill said. You mean, this Spider-Man is actually a godlike existence. Someone will become Spider-Man, even if it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, even if it's a pig, even if it's a refrigerator. Nick Fury frowned. He said with a frown. As he talks about this, the parallel universe on the scientific side begins to rush towards the mysterious side. But the analysis is very reasonable. Apart from this, there is almost no other explanation that can explain everything in front of me. On the contrary, Gwen saw what was written in Lin Feng's diary, saying that she was his favorite, and her pretty face turned slightly red. What does this mean, fans? But will my future self be with a black man? Although she was not racist, she had never thought about such a thing. But then again, if it is really the Gwen spider, doesn't it mean that the possibility of time travel exists, and then you can not only see Toby Spider, Garfield Spider, and Dutch Brothers 3 Spiders in the same frame, maybe you can also see various Spider-Man. With the number of Spider-Man in the parallel universe, we might as well form a Spider-Man Council just like the Conqueror formed the Council of Kong. But think about it again, a Spider-Man is already as chatty as a little fool. If there was a Spider-Man Council, wouldn't it immediately become the largest vegetable market in the world? That picture is so terrible. Time travel. When everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. and Tony Stark saw this, their eyes suddenly lit up. Does this mean that time travel has appeared in some timelines where the so-called Gwen Spiders have appeared? Tony Stark's eyes lit up. Now that Lin Fang's diary has almost verified the existence of parallel time and space, he provided a lot of new ideas. Of course, the premise is that Lin Fang's diary is believed to be true and credible. But 3 spiders are in the same frame. This spider, according to Gwen Spider, should refer to the collective name of Spider-Man. Garfield Spider mentioned before that the one whose girlfriend Gwen died, and which Toby Spider is Spider-Man. Who is Brother Holland? What are the differences between these 3 Spider-Man? The more Tony Stark thought about it, the more he felt that the amount of information was too much, and he couldn't help but curse secretly in his heart. Why does Lin Feng love to write nicknames when writing diaries? Why doesn't he write a name? Now that he is facing these nouns, he is completely blind. Sir, 3 spiders in the same frame should mean that 3 Spider-Man appear together. Perhaps it is because of the so-called time and space travel that this situation occurs. Jarvis reminded aloud. It's possible, but if time travel is feasible, what technology is used? Wormhole, or some more unimaginable concept? Tony Stark murmured to himself. Although the extraordinary side has now shown very amazing abilities, and even things like gods and time travel have appeared, for him, he is still used to using science to explain these phenomena. In his opinion, if it cannot be explained for the time being, it is only due to the limited scientific development of the Earth. No matter what phenomenon it is, whether it is explained and understood from the supernatural side or the scientific side, the essence is the same. Just like thunder and lightning, this ability of gods in myths and legends can now be mastered by humans on the scientific side. For everyone at S.H.I.E.L.D., what they can see is countless Spider-Man. They have evaluated the strength of Spider-Woman, who wanders in midair in New York every day. Whether it is speed or strength, judging from the information collected, she is definitely far superior to ordinary people. It can even be said that apart from her fighting skills, she is a complete novice. Her basic physical fitness far exceeds that of Captain America recorded in the files. This is still one of the Spider-Man. If according to Lin Feng, so many Spider-Man can form a Spider-Man Council, then there must be at least several hundred people. This is the size of the General Council. Hundreds of such existences that exceed human limits are a great threat in themselves. The real trouble is not Spider-Man. First of all, Spider-Man should be a superhero, at least not a criminal. But what about Kong the Conqueror? Of those people called conquerors in history, who is not the one who caused endless killings? The widowed sister Natasha said. The most terrifying thing is that the Spider-Man Council is just a joke made by Lin Feng, but this Kong Council seems to be real. We assume that there is only one identical individual in a universe, or a parallel time and space. Then this Kangji Council must have at least 100 or 200 people, or even hundreds or thousands of people. We don't know the specific number of people, but there are one thing is necessary, that is, they must be able to travel through time and space. At the very least, they must be able to communicate through time and space, just like today's video conferences. Even if we think more strongly about him, he may even be able to physically travel through time and space. Go to different universes. If this is the case, then Kong the Conqueror may become a cross-universe terrorist organization. Natasha, the widowed sister, analyzed. Nick Fury nodded. Nicknames like Conqueror were generally common in ancient times or among certain warlords in Africa, but they would not be the mainstream civilization of mankind. Now they know a name called Conqueror. The people of Zakang formed a Council of Kong, which could exchange experience and technology from different universes, and even trade resources. They could fully imagine how terrifying such an organization would be. The point is, just communicating across the universe is already outrageous. After all, humans today can't even fly out of the Earth, and even communicating with the Earth and the Moon is very difficult. If you want to go to places like Mars, you have to wait a long time for a response to a call. From this alone, we can see the superb level of technology possessed by Kong the Conqueror, or maybe it is the level of magic. The more Nick Fury thought about it, the more he felt that something was not right. If everything on the surface of this world could be regarded as the surface world, then compared to the surface world, there was an inner world filled with many shady things. Including various gangs, underground organizations, terrorist organizations, and even various mysterious creatures, such as vampires, werewolves, and some strange mysterious organizations and extraordinary organizations. These can all be classified into the inner world. Among them, S.H.I.E.L.D. is also the king of underground organizations. But now it seems that there are so many things they don't know. This was a bit of a slap in the face. Thinking of this, his dark skin felt a little red, and he was very happy. It turns out that I only know the tip of the iceberg of the other world. Gwen's death will never come to an end. I can save the whole world, but I can't save you. Suddenly, a video appeared at the end of the diary. Everyone saw it and clicked on it one after another. The picture unfolded, and at the beginning there was a young man wearing armor with a ferocious face, staring at Spider-Man Peter Parker in a red and blue suit in front of him, and said crazily, "I will also take away your hope." This is exactly what Lin Feng uploaded, the clip of Gwen's death in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Facing the crazy little green goblin Harry, the Amazing Spider-Man Peter Parker panicked and shouted, "No, Gwen, run." But it was too late. The little green goblin Harry had already flown directly to Gwen's direction on the flying skateboard and grabbed her away. "Harry, Harry, let her down." Peter Parker chased after her crazily, but couldn't catch up at all. The two of them kept chasing each other in midair, and the screen kept spinning, making people dizzy. Gwen Stacy, who was outside the screen, looked at the Gwen in the screen who was not exactly the same as herself, and felt a strange feeling in her heart. According to Lin Feng's diary, this is his peer in another parallel universe. In the picture, the chase between the two sides has reached a bell tower. Spider-Man cannot fly and can only watch the little green goblin Harry carrying Gwen into the sky. He can only helplessly shout, "Harry, this isn't you, Harry, put her down." "Harry," Gwen also said to the little green goblin Harry. "Harry is dead." "Harry," the little green goblin shouted with an extremely ferocious look. "Harry, this has nothing to do with anyone else, it's just a matter between you and me. Do you want to fight me? Fight me and let her go." Peter Parker shouted loudly. "Okay." Upon hearing this, the little green goblin Harry threw Gwen down directly. Peter Parker quickly jumped up and caught Gwen. The two fell directly into the bell tower, but before they could rejoice, a pumpkin bomb was thrown down, blowing them up instantly. At the critical moment, Gwen was caught by Peter Parker. After settling Gwen for a while, the battle between Peter Parker and the little green goblin began. The battle between the two sides was extremely thrilling. Peter Parker was obviously stronger, but when he had to take care of Gwen at the same time, there was no way to free his hands. The two sides strangled each other's necks. Finally, the spider thread broke, and Gwen fell from the high altitude, along with countless bell tower parts. Peter Parker tried his best to catch Gwen, but it was too late. Peter Parker could only hold Gwen's body helplessly, hoping that she could breathe, and kept calling her name. "Gwen, Gwen, breathe, breathe, wake up, wake up. Don't leave me, Gwen, don't do this, please." The screen went black and that was the end. Everyone who has watched all this feels extremely heavy in their hearts. Although they are not ordinary people, or elite agents, or top rich people, or superheroes, in essence, under these identities, they are still just some ordinary people. Naturally, they have the mentality of ordinary people. When they see this, they still feel uncomfortable. This is especially true for Gwen Stacy. For her, seeing her own counterpart in parallel time and space for the first time, is this what it feels like? Is this the fate of Lin Feng who didn't become Spider-Man as mentioned in his diary? Will he die under the bell tower? Will he be implicated by that Peter Parker? She took a deep breath and felt that she still had to rely on herself. She was not the weak parallel time and space herself. Even if she died, she would never be implicated in this way. She looked at it for a while, and it seemed that Lin Feng's diary entries this time had ended. Then she finally put away the diary. then took out her daily clothes from her backpack and put them on before Shirin walked out of the building. The elevator goes downstairs and leaves. Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. also dispersed. This time, the diary contained a lot of exciting information, which was enough for them to digest for a long time. For Lin Feng, this was just a daily diary entry. The market was still immersed in the shock of Tony Stark's announcement to close the arms department. Stark Industries' stock plummeted, not even 1/10 of its previous price. Lin Feng took the opportunity to acquire a lot of stocks, shares. A few days later, Tony Stark announced that he had developed cold nuclear fusion technology, which is a new, reliable and clean energy source. As soon as this news came out, the shares of Stark Industries soared. It can be said that Tony Stark suddenly became the focus of global attention. Because although Stark Industries was very large before, it was just an arms group. There was no shortage of arms dealers in the world. But so far, no country has claimed to have conquered nuclear fusion technology. One can only imagine how difficult it is. And his new clean energy initiative has been welcomed by countless environmentalists. In just a short period of time, the shares that had fallen earlier recovered and even doubled from their original value. For Lin Feng, it was naturally a huge benefit. The 20 million he invested suddenly turned into 400 million. In an instant, he surpassed the accumulation of his family for decades and 2 generations, and he immediately gained wealth. And this is not the limit. As time goes by, Stark Industries will only grow bigger and bigger, and Lin Feng's shares will also rise accordingly. Lin Feng also had to sigh. No wonder the United States was going to industrialize later, finance was making money too fast. If he just sticks to his business, he can increase his investment from $20 million to $400 million, and it will be pure cash flow. It is impossible for many rich people with a net worth of more than 10 to 2 billion to come up with so much cash. Totally fattened up. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, a bright moon hangs high in the sky, pouring cold moonlight onto the ground. Lin Feng had just come out of the original owner's parents' home and had just completed the Mid-Autumn Festival family gathering. Now that several months have passed, he has gradually become accustomed to life in this world. It turned out that the parents of the original owner had nothing to do with Lin Feng during this period, and wanted him to end this state and go home to take over. After all, he was a third-generation rich man who was a billionaire. But when Lin Feng pulled out his money in the stock and showed it to them, they knew that their child was going to be successful. Lin Feng only said that he learned to trade stocks in the stock market during this period, and gradually accumulated capital, and then caught up with the collapse of Stark Industries stock and completed the bargain hunting. The current net worth has exceeded the accumulation of the family in decades. The family members were just happy for Lin Feng and did not mention letting him come back to take over. After all, the child was quite productive outside. They just felt that if Lin Feng failed in the future, there would still be a share of the family business for him to inherit. And Lin Feng felt somewhat guilty about this. After all, their real child was gone, and now standing in front of them was a soul from another universe. At this time, Lin Feng couldn't help but think of his family, wondering how they were doing in another universe. Perhaps, there is still a possibility for me to go back. For example, to reach the multiverse level, or to draw some powerful props. Lin Feng secretly said to himself in his heart. In fact, Tony Stark and Nick Fury's psychological profile of Lin Feng was not wrong at all, because Lin Feng did not have much sense of belonging to the United States, even to this Earth, and to this universe. After all, the most important stage of his life when his values were established were in another universe. His real parents, relatives, and friends were also in another universe, so no matter what, he couldn't have much sense of belonging to this universe. In his heart, he still has hopes for being able to return to his own universe one day in the future. As long as you persist and keep a diary day and night, everything is possible. After feeling sad, Lin Feng walked on the streets of New York at night. I have to say that the streets of New York are not a good place at night. After leaving the high-end community at home, we arrived at a poor community. There were more homeless people nearby, and Lin Feng saw a robbery in front of his eyes happened. There were even a few black people who looked at Lin Feng's Asian face and thought he was an Asian who was easy to bully. They wanted to rob him on the spot. However, they were no match for Lin Feng. Lin Feng just broke the hands of these people as usual. The right hands of these black criminals were completely destroyed and the bones were shattered. It was impossible to recover in the future. One of their legs was trampled off, which directly eliminated the possibility of them going out to commit crimes in the future. Lin Feng has always been merciless when dealing with these criminals and will not be polite at all. But before he could think about it, a bank ATM robbery occurred in the distance. A group of black people took C4 bombs and blew up the AMT machine. When they were about to take the money and leave, a figure wearing medieval armor appeared. Falling from the sky, they knocked them all down with 3 blows, then tied them together and waited for the arrival of the police. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. Wonder Woman. This Wonder Woman is 70–80% similar to Gal Gadot in her previous life, but she is younger and has a better figure, and her hot figure cannot be concealed even if she wears a suit. Before Lin Feng could react, Wonder Woman, who had cleaned up all these things, grabbed the clouds in the sky with her mantra lasso, and flew away. Seeing this scene, Lin Feng also felt a slight grin on his lips. Although he had seen this scene in the movie, he also knew that Wonder Woman seemed to have this kind of flying method. In the future, as her strength continues to improve, she seems to be able to fly directly, but this still feels ridiculous. Is this scientific? Obviously it doesn't match, but the problem is, this is a world that does not follow scientific principles. Even he himself is not a product of science. This. Suddenly, a slightly frightened voice came from next to him. Lin Feng felt that it was a little familiar. He turned around and saw that it was a young man with a horse face and curly hair. Wearing a flashy red suit, he looked like he had just come out of a party. He looked at the figure of Wonder Woman quickly disappearing in the sky with a puzzled look on his face, as if he had seen a ghost. Wan Fu, Lin Feng almost blurted out, but in the next second, he immediately realized that in this Marvel world, it cannot be Wan Fu. There is only one possibility. This is the future Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. Seeing that it was Doctor Strange, Lin Feng's first reaction was to stay away from him, because at this time, Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange was related to a super boss, and he was also one of the few godfathers in the first phase of Marvel. Super boss, Supreme Mage Ancient One. Doctor Strange is the key to whether Ancient One can retire safely in the future, so she has been paying attention to Doctor Strange's affairs. Currently, Lin Feng does not want to get into Ancient One's eyes. Although Ji Yuyi does not have the outrageous abilities of TVA, there is no doubt that at this stage in Marvel, she is undoubtedly the boss among the bosses. She has killed countless dimensional demons. Even the overlord of the universe, Thanos, who wanted to attack the Earth, did not dare to do it directly, partly because he was afraid of the Ancient One. Ji Yuyi's melee ability is average, but her magical attainments are something that Lin Feng is very afraid of. In future generations, even someone as powerful as Dr. Green Bruce Banner, with his majestic body and powerful strength, will still be slapped by Ji Yuyi one by one. The beating made me feel like I was out of body. If Stephen Strange is unable to become Doctor Strange because of his relationship, it is completely conceivable that the Ancient One will definitely come to trouble him. After all, she can use the time gem to observe the future. She can know the future direction at a glance. Wouldn't it be easy to cause trouble for herself when the time comes? And from a very real point of view, Lin Feng did not want to interrupt Stephen Strange's path to becoming Doctor Strange, because he also needed Doctor Strange to deal with the legendary Dark Lord Dormammu. As the most difficult one to deal with among the several Heavenly Father-level beings that will appear in the first phase of Marvel, Lin Feng could not think of any good way. The other Ancient Ones, or Rodin, or the extremely powerful Thanos all at least have physical existences. But this Dormammu is different. He is completely integrated with the Dark Dimension. Basically, it can be said that as long as the Dark Dimension is not destroyed, he will always exist. How to fight against such an existence? It's impossible to fight. Only the Ancient One on the magic side can fight with magic, and he has to use 3 temples to form a formation to prevent Dormammu from coming. It can be said that Ji Yuyi's strength is famous among many dimensional demon gods, and many dimensional demon gods have been slaughtered by her. But there are not many dimensional demons who can make her helpless, and one of them is Dormammu. Even the reason why Ancient One has maintained his lifespan for so many years is because he has absorbed the energy of the Dark Dimension to keep his body incorruptible. Otherwise, how could normal human beings live for hundreds or thousands of years? Many people with mental misophobia may not be able to accept this, but that does not include Lin Feng. For him, there is no distinction between good and evil in power. The key is how to use it. It's not a heinous thing for Ancient One to absorb the energy of the dark dimension. Although she always said that she could not withstand the invasion of darkness, looking at her later appearance, it did not look like she could not suppress the dark power in her body. Not to mention, there is a big boss like Weishan Emperor behind Ji Yuyi. All in all, it is not so much that Ancient One could not stand the invasion of dark power and had to end his life, but rather that he did not want to continue to be the supreme mage at all. In the comics, after handing over the position of Sorcerer Supreme to Doctor Strange, the Ancient One soared in spirit and traveled across the multiverse. He was a workman who had been squeezed for hundreds of years and finally got off work, completely running away. As for Dormammu, such a troublesome existence, no one except the Ancient One would be able to use him in a one-on-one fight. Even Doctor Strange could only use the properties of the Time Stone to force Dormammu to retreat. Therefore, Lin Feng does not want to interrupt this process, nor does he want to change everything, which will lead to the historical outcome of Stephen Strange becoming Doctor Strange being changed. By then, the Earth may be directly swallowed by Dormammu. Such a timeline does exist. Of course, as an incorrect timeline, it will be cut out by TVA. At that time, we couldn't even wait for Thanos to invade, and Thanos would snap his fingers. And when Stephen Strange looked at Wonder Woman's leaving figure in shock, thinking that he was too much, he suddenly realized that there was someone missing next to him. Is there anyone next to you just now? Stephen Strange looked to the side. He vaguely remembered that there seemed to be a person standing next to him just now, but he disappeared quietly after just a while. Did you really drink too much today? Impossible, I can't drink so much. Not far away from him, the robbers were still tied to the ground, and further away there were several black people lying on the ground wailing. This is not a place to stay for long. Stephen Strange left here quickly. This kind of slum community was not a place he would visit every day. On weekdays, he would at most drive past it far away. If I hadn't just attended a banquet today and needed to sober up, and planned to go out for a walk, I wouldn't have come here at all, let alone see such an exciting scene. That's Wonder Woman. After Stephen Strange left, not long after, he still remembered the identity of that female warrior. Isn't she the Wonder Woman who has been very popular on the internet recently? Just when Doctor Strange was amazed by his experience, Lin Feng had returned to his home and fully used his super speed to the extreme. Although it is not at the same level as the speed of the Flash, the speed at which he can run completely exceeds that of a top-notch sports car, and his physical strength is endless, so he will not be tired at all. This is only the initial stage of the Motherland template. When the template is upgraded in the future, he believes that the running speed can easily exceed the speed of sound. Real super speed. After returning home, the first thing he habitually did was take out his diary and start recording. Today I met two important protagonists one after another. Now these have become some kind of habits. Recording it every day will increase the progress of the energy tank in your mind, but there is an upper limit and it will not increase without limit. So even if Lin Feng is very anxious, he can only wait slowly and draws again and again to enhance his own energy, strength. The moon is full during the Mid-Autumn Festival. I have just attended a family gathering. I wonder how my parents are doing now. Are they still immersed in the sadness of losing their son? Lin Feng sighed. He was not born in Kedian orphanage. He originally had a normal family in another universe. Today coincided with the Mid-Autumn Festival, and he was called back by his original parents to have a reunion dinner, but it also aroused his homesickness feelings. However, he suppressed his homesickness and continued writing. I never expected that I would meet the two protagonists today. It was another day full of fun. Although I had already seen Wonder Woman using the mantra to lasso lightning and fly, but today I saw Wonder Woman holding the mantra. It still feels very awkward to catch the clouds in the sky with a lasso, and then use this method to fly away from the scene. Although I know that there are many unscientific places in this world, this is too unscientific. By the way, none of these second-generation gods can fly seriously. It's outrageous that Diana, the demigod daughter of Zeus, can't fly, but it seems reasonable to think that Thor, the son of Odin, can't fly either and can only fly with Thor's hammer. But speaking of which, Zeus also exists in the Marvel Universe. How to calculate the relationship between this and Diana? Will they be considered serious siblings with the Hercules who will appear in the future? Funny. There are so many flaws that I can't stop. Lin Feng updated his diary, which undoubtedly immediately alerted the holders of copies of the diary. In Tony Stark's mansion, there are many young models, celebrities, and happy people by the swimming pool. Tony Stark is dancing in a steel armor and is the focus of everyone's attention. Below, a black officer stared at Tony Stark with dissatisfaction. "Sir, Lin Feng's diary has been updated." Suddenly, at this moment, Jarvis's reminder came from Tony Stark's earphones. Tony Stark suddenly became excited and quickly woke up. This was a habit he had developed over the years. No matter how high he was having fun, once he got down to business, he would wake up immediately. "Hey, everyone, you can have fun first, I'll excuse you for a while," Tony Stark said and left the swimming pool. The young models and female stars were quite disappointed, but they soon went to play by themselves, got up. "Hey, Tony, listen to me." The black officer caught up with Tony Stark and said. "Rhodes." Tony Stark had to stop, because this man was his good friend and the staunchest supporter in the military, James Rhodes. It was the war machine that became famous later. "No matter what, it's impossible for me to hand over the technology of the armor. You know, no one can force me to do something I don't want to do." Tony Stark knew what his friend was going to say and refused directly. "I know, but patriotism is the obligation of every American people." "Tony, you are also an American citizen," Colonel Rhodes said. "He is also in a difficult situation, but now the pressure from above is very high." Ever since Tony Stark revealed that he possesses the technology of iron armor, there have been countless people who want to seize his technology. If Tony Stark himself was not a top rich man and had very strong connections with the upper echelons of the United States, I am afraid that someone had long wanted him to commit suicide with dozens of bullets in the back. "Ha, don't say that to me, James, as I said before, this is just a mechanical prosthesis, not a weapon. And what weapons does our army lack? We are already the most powerful on the entire planet. Our country has the most powerful army on the entire planet. What do you need my armor for? To massacre innocent people more efficiently?" Tony Stark said sarcastically without hesitation. He originally thought that the weapons he made were to protect the country, but later he discovered that these weapons could also be used to suppress innocent people. Especially when he personally flew to Afghanistan some time ago to eliminate the warlord who originally kidnapped him, and saw the local situation in Afghanistan, he became even more determined that he would never help others. And as he said, the United States has the most powerful military on the planet. Who dares to attack him? It's more than enough to protect yourself. But Tony, some things cannot be decided by whether you are willing or not. You can escape for a while, but you cannot escape for a lifetime. You are not invincible, Colonel Rhodes warned his friend with a serious face. Tony Stark sighed, and then said cynically, "Then let's escape for a while. I don't want to discuss this issue with you anymore. This issue ends here, okay?" In the original timeline, Tony Stark was about to die due to palladium poisoning, so he entrusted one of the Mark armors to his friends, which was a disguised form of submission. But now that he is in good health and has not been poisoned by palladium, he has not yet had such thoughts. After saying that, Tony Stark left his friend James Rhodes behind and called two young models to hold him back. And he went down to the basement. While mechanically taking off his steel armor on the basement console, he picked up the diary and started to read it. The first thing that caught his eye was that Lin Feng missed his hometown and his parents. He sighed in his heart. Lin Feng still had a home to think about. He could also think about returning to his own universe and home one day in the future. Goodbye to one's own parents. But what about yourself? Never have that chance again. I will never have the chance to tell my parents, your son has grown up. No matter how prominent his current status is and how many achievements he has made, his parents are still the softest part of his heart, and they are also the eternal regret in his heart. There will never be a chance to make amends. Lin Feng, a person from another universe, still has a glimmer of hope to see his family, but he will never have this opportunity again. But think about it, given the old-fashioned impression of his father, he would probably be furious when he saw his cynical appearance. The relationship between the two father and son was not very good to begin with, and it might even collapse in an instant. Although he had also heard that his father seemed to be a swinger when he was young, but those were just rumors. The father in his impression was serious, stubborn, and old-fashioned. And he became like this just to resist his father. If his father is serious, stubborn, and old-fashioned, then he himself will be dissolute and cynical. This is a silent confrontation. But as time went by, even if it was really just to fight against his father at the beginning, it has now become the background of his character. He has the most wealth in the world, but he can't buy what he wants. There was no time to express his feelings. Tony Stark said directly, "Jarvis, contact Nick Fury and the others, and turn on the conference mode." "Okay, sir, the contact has been completed," Jarvis said. A moment later, in front of him, a figure was projected in, but it was none other than Nick Fury. Then the widowed sister Natasha, Hawkeye Barton, Hill, Coulson, etc. all joined in. This is a multi-person remote chat system developed by Tony Stark. With external equipment, people can be projected into the conference room. Recently, his cooperation with S.H.I.E.L.D. has gradually begun to increase, especially the fact that they both have diaries, which puts both parties on the same front. They have cooperated several times and even had some technical exchanges. In order to ensure that the diary updates can be seen as soon as possible, Tony Stark developed this system, because these people are not ordinary people, and it is impossible to keep the diary updates every day, especially as action agents. In terms of management, Widow Sister and Hawkeye even often have outing missions, and they are not likely to sit at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters all the time. With this equipment, even if you are far and wide, you can use S.H.I.E.L.D.'s satellite or Tony Stark's private communications satellite to get online for meetings in a timely manner. Well, the rich are so arrogant. Private, exclusive, not corporate, satellite. Natasha, why did you fail? Hill asked the widowed sister Natasha when she saw the green and red patches on her face. Hey, I just cleaned out a terrorist's den and got a little injured. Natasha, the widowed sister, said directly without caring. That's not a little bit. If it weren't for me, she would almost be dead. Hawkeye Barton was on the side doing a timely last-ditch attack and said. Barton, sometimes, shutting up is a virtue. Natasha, the widowed sister, retorted unceremoniously. Although the two of them are fighting each other, everyone can see their deep friendship. Okay, stop making trouble and hurry up. It looks like there will be some great content today. Nick Fury promptly interrupted the exchange between the two. Everyone's thoughts quickly came back and they checked the contents of the diary. I skillfully skipped the first one and read the second one. Great amount of information. Two protagonists, what do you mean? Tony Stark touched his chin and looked at the description in Lin Feng's diary. If he remembered correctly, Lin Feng once said in his diary that he was also a protagonist. In addition, the previous Spider-Man is also a protagonist. Could it be that this protagonist is similar to those who can stir up troubles in history? But he instinctively felt that Lin Feng definitely didn't mean what he meant by the protagonist. The mantra lassos lightning and clouds fly. Tony Stark felt that his brain was about to explode. Is this thing really scientific? He could hardly imagine what kind of flight this was. But he soon found out, because Jarvis found the surveillance video of the area where today's incident occurred through the internet. Although the shooting angle was limited and they could only vaguely see some, they still saw the bizarre flying method that Lin Feng said. He actually relied on the shining golden rope to tie up the shapeless clouds, and then used the clouds as a means of burrowing. With a little force, he actually jumped up and flew out like this. Although he knew that existence like Wonder Woman could not be understood scientifically. But even if it's magic, this is too outrageous. Everyone else has this expression too, it's not scientific or magical. So that rope is called the lasso of truth. The widowed sister Natasha was amazed and said, from the name, as the name suggests, you can tell a lot of things. It seems to be something that can make people tell the truth. People caught by Wonder Woman before will automatically tell all the crimes they have committed. I used to think it was some kind of magic that makes people tell the truth, but now it seems that it's not magic, but the function of this mantra lasso. Nick Fury touched his chin and suddenly came to his senses. There is a lot of information about Wonder Woman's research in S.H.I.E.L.D., and one of them highlights that prisoners caught by Wonder Woman often confess many details of their crimes, even in cases where they have not been caught before. He confessed, and even went so far as to reveal that he had secretly watched girls take a bath when he was a child. In this regard, analysts from S.H.I.E.L.D. believe that it should be some kind of magic that allows people to tell the truth, but now the truth is revealed. It is the truth lasso. After being trapped, it will continue to tell the truth. But the key point is this sentence, the second generation of gods. It turns out that this Wonder Woman is actually the second generation of gods, and the second generation of god kings, the daughter of Zeus. Hawkeye Barton looked at the records in the diary in shock. Did we poke holes in the gods' nests? First there was Thor, the god of thunder, and now there's Wonder Woman. But I remember that Zeus doesn't have this daughter, right? Look carefully, Lin Feng is talking about demigods, which means her mother is just an ordinary mortal. God only knows how many demigods Zeus has children. Natasha, the widowed sister, complained. Zeus is indeed a very famous big stallion. From people to gods to all kinds of creatures, from women to men, from strangers to sisters and even grandmothers, there is almost nothing he can't win. There's nothing he can't talk about. Most of the entire Greek mythology is Zeus' various romantic history. Originally this was nothing, but one day, the myth came into reality. Precisely because Zeus with so many different objects, everyone can still count how many children of gods he has, but it is completely uncountable how many children of demigods he has. In this regard, the gods and kings of Greek mythology are also a mess, including the two brothers of Zeus, as well as various gods, demigods, and various monsters and monsters. So although everyone was shocked by the identity of Wonder Woman, they quickly accepted this setting. And Thor, the god of thunder, is the son of Odin. Everyone knows this, but they don't know that he can't fly either. He has to rely on Thor's hammer to fly. This is undoubtedly beyond everyone's awareness. So, Jarvis, all the gods in the East can fly. Tony Stark thought for a while, and it seems that in the Western mythology system, not everyone can fly. It seems that some of them require some special equipment to fly. However, since all myths have been completely replaced by Christian mythology, no one seems to have considered this issue. After all, in Christian mythology, angels have wings and can naturally fly. Yes, sir, judging from Eastern mythology, it seems that they can all fly through the clouds and mist. Jarvis searched for Eastern mythology, completed the analysis, and said. Then he has the nerve to say that it is unscientific and unreasonable for Wonder Woman to use the mantra lasso to trap the clouds and fly away. They, the Eastern gods, are not very scientific when they stand on the clouds. Tony Stark couldn't bear it. He said with a vicious tongue. But she is the daughter of Zeus in other universes, that is, the so-called DC universe, not the daughter of Zeus in our universe, so there should be some differences. But in the future, not only Thor will appear, even Hercules will show up. Tony Stark said with a ridiculous expression on his face. This is not only outrageous, it is simply outrageous. First there was Thor, then the demigod Wonder Woman, and in the future there will be Hercules, which is a bit incredible no matter how you look at it. After getting Lin Feng's diary, he found that his cognition and three views were in the process of being subverted, and subverted again. But he also had the same problem as Lin Feng. Since this Wonder Woman Diana comes from another universe, how should he and Zeus of this universe reconcile? Can they still be considered biological father and daughter? The outrageous flying methods of the second-generation gods. Then a video appeared. Everyone quickly clicked to take a look. The first thing they saw was Thor, the god of thunder. He was wearing a medieval armor and a cloak. He looked exactly like the ordinary person wearing a t-shirt and jeans seen in the previous video, different. He swung the Thor's hammer in his hand, and then the Thor's hammer flew out instantly, and he also flew out instantly. When Tony Stark saw this scene, his eyelids suddenly jumped. He suddenly felt that Lin Feng's complaints made sense. It was indeed a bit outrageous for Thor to fly like this. Disgraceful. If you were an ancient person, if you saw someone who could fly, you would have knelt down and crawled at their feet. However, modern people on Earth have already created flying vehicles, and this ability is no longer so rare. It seems that Thor in that timeline really lost his divine power for some reason. This is what he should be like. Nick Fury said. Lin Feng's diary mentioned before that Thor, the god of thunder, was thrown down from the Nordic heavenly palace by his father and was exiled. The purpose was to allow him to gain enlightenment and sublime in the process of exile, and finally find himself, so maybe his divine power was taken back before that. Nick Fury's analysis made everyone nod. This can explain why Thor was shot to death by Hawkeye Barton. However, after testing the blood in his body, it was found that he lived for at least 1,000 years and was not an ordinary person. Reason. But Tony Stark was thinking more at this time. If this is the case, wouldn't it mean that these beings called gods are actually no different from them in essence, but after possessing the so-called divine power, they have great power? And this power can actually be taken away. If he develops an anti-Thor armor in the future, can he get inspiration from this aspect? Is there any way to cut off the power of these gods? For a time, many thoughts flashed through Tony Stark's mind. Then, the scene turned to a chaotic scene. Wonder Woman walked faster and faster with a sad expression. She finally cried and shouted, "I give up my wish." As he spoke, he started running. Everyone saw that the wound under her left collarbone gradually healed on its own. She let out an angry roar, and then jumped directly off the ground. Then with an angry roar, she threw the mantra lasso, and her whole body instantly flew into the sky with the mantra lasso. Everyone saw that in midair, she used the mantra lasso to lasso the plane, and instantly pulled it up again. Then she learned to fly, as if some ability had been unlocked. This is very simple, just with the help of wind and air. Learn to ride it, catch it. Accompanied by a male voice narration, Wonder Woman finally fully learned to float in the air, and then she swung the mantra lasso in her hand to fly. Even the next outrageous scene happened. She actually learned to fly completely, and she directly took the classic Superman pose and flew directly through the clouds. And this is where the scene finally ends. Although everyone had seen the diary a long time ago, and had seen the surveillance video of Wonder Woman flying with the mantra lasso more than once before, seeing such a clear and close-up flying scene still felt very outrageous. Especially at this time, everyone is considered a person on the scientific side. Even a person who has been transformed like the widowed sister Natasha has accepted scientific transformation and believes in science in her heart. And now Wonder Woman just relies on what a narrator said, with the help of wind and air, learns to control it, catch it, and then she can fly. Isn't it so outrageous? Moreover, the mantra lasso can actually be flown out with it when thrown in the air. This scene basically involved throwing the science they knew to the ground, smashing it to pieces, and then stepping on it several times. Okay, I have to admit, maybe we have to look at the world from a different perspective now. For these gods, or the second generation of gods, it would be too naive for us to still talk about science. Tony Stark said helplessly. Everyone nodded seriously. The world now seems to be completely different from what they originally knew. Even the people in S.H.I.E.L.D., who claim to know a lot about other worlds, now feel that they are no different from ordinary people. The so-called king of the other world and the uncrowned king of the underground world are only on the surface, and the real existence of the deep water is beyond their reach. Do you think you know the truth about the world if you beat up vampires and deal with werewolves on a daily basis? How naive. But just when everyone thought that today's diary would end after the video as usual, unexpectedly, new content resurfaced. Wonder Woman is still very good looking, especially when she was young, but she almost scared Stephen Strange to death before he became Doctor Strange. I have to say that New York is big and small. You can actually stumble upon Doctor Strange himself. It is estimated that the scene he saw can make him doubt his life. His 3 views are about to explode, but it is better to stay away from him. After all, he is the successor selected by the Supreme Mage Ancient One, and it is related to the future retirement of Ancient One. Plan, this is one of the few Heavenly Father level bosses who appeared in the first phase of Marvel. If she catches her eye, it will really be over. It's better to let Doctor Strange hang out quietly for a few more years. When the Dark Dimensional Lord Dormammu comes in the future, we still expect him to stop him. At that time, the Ancient One didn't even know if he was really dead, except for him. In addition, there is really no one on the magic side of the earth who can stop Dormammu. That is what makes the sky unresponsive and the earth unresponsive. It is much scarier than the snapping fingers of Thanos and that purple sweet potato spirit. Even if Thanos snaps his fingers, I still have half a chance of surviving. If the entire Earth is swallowed up by Dormammu, it will really be a dead end. This is another piece of information with a very large amount of information. Everyone has just accepted the setting that Wonder Woman is the second generation of gods, and now suddenly there is such a Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. This Doctor Strange, what a strange nickname. Tony Stark couldn't help but taunted him. A lot of information. Hilton paused and then said, "Who is this ancient one?" "The Supreme Mage." What a domineering nickname, magician. Everyone also has countless questions in their minds. Especially Nick Fury felt that it was an existence that he had never heard of. The Supreme Mage, this sounds like he is no small person. If someone else had said it, Nick Fury might have felt a bit bragging, but if it had been said by Lin Feng, that would be another matter. Credibility is greatly increased, and Stephen Strange, who also has the nickname Doctor Strange in the future, is actually this person's chosen successor. In other words, he may also become a very powerful magician in the future. Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu, this nickname is really powerful. Hawkeye Barton couldn't help but exclaimed. What's his nickname in comparison? Hawkeye, it's so weak. Tony Stark's face was extremely solemn. From the meaning of Lin Feng's words, it was that the coming of Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension in the future, was not even an invasion and occupation of the Earth as they imagined. Instead, it swallows the Earth in one bite. The Earth is such a huge celestial body. It can swallow the Earth in one bite. It can be seen that the size of this Dark Dimension Lord is probably unimaginable. From a scientific point of view, there is no way to fight it. Even if there is a nuclear bomb, it will be useless. Although nuclear bombs give people the feeling that they can destroy the world, but if you look deeper, you will know that even if all the nuclear bombs in the hands of the council members on the Earth explode, they can only destroy mankind itself. Do you want to destroy the Earth? That is simply impossible. It would be difficult to even slightly scratch the skin of the Earth. Facing such a behemoth, their technological weapons were of no use at all, and they could only wait to die. So, according to Lin Feng, is there a way to deal with this dark-dimensional Lord Dormammu? Can the magicians on the magic side handle it? The widowed sister Natasha said in shock. She couldn't imagine how powerful those mages could be. That seems to be the meaning. Then we must not disturb this Doctor Strange. Otherwise, if he cannot become that Doctor Strange, the Earth may not be able to survive the crisis of the dark-dimensional Lord Dormammu, and there will be more provoke this Mage Supreme. Nick Fury said, "Still monitor from a distance, but don't disturb me. Just raise the level to the same level as Lin Feng." Everyone nodded. It was still safe. What Lin Feng said in his diary was so terrifying. He swallowed the Earth in one mouthful and was invaded by a dark dimension. Everyone felt a little scared in their hearts. After thinking about it, it seems that the best way is really Lin Feng's way, not to disturb Doctor Strange's growth, and then let him take on the task of blocking the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu in the future. And this Thanos, the purple sweet potato spirit mentioned in Lin Feng's diary last time, was originally called Thanos. Have any of you heard of it? Coulson asked. Everyone shook their heads. This name was really unfamiliar to them. Lin Feng mentioned Thanos' snap of his fingers again and again. Is it a kind of magic? Or some other method? As long as he snaps his fingers, there is a half chance that he will die directly. Hawkeye Barton thought for a while, said. Immediately, Lin Feng's hair stood on his head. The implication behind Lin Feng's words was that he ignored defense and died directly. I'm afraid it was some kind of big move. And what is the so-called Heavenly Father class? It's like a certain level, but is this Heavenly Father class very powerful? How powerful? Tony Stark is already evaluating if he wants to take action against the so-called Heavenly Father class. What a winning rate. Lin Feng means that there are already several such beings at this stage. One of them is the so-called Supreme Mage Ancient One. From the description, it seems that he is from the justice and lawful camp, not a villain. The more people analyze, the more they know, and the heavier they feel. Not to mention Doctor Strange, in this paragraph alone, 3 big guys appear: the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme, Thanos the Purple Potato Demon, and Dormammu, the Dark Dimension Lord. Lin Feng's fear of these 3 people was almost beyond words, and he couldn't even fight against them. As for what kind of strength Lin Feng is, everyone who has been monitoring Lin Feng in various ways knows very well. Every time Lin Feng performs a heroic act, someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. will follow up to judge his strength. It can be said that it is obvious that his strength has been continuously improving recently. Oh. He has completely stopped being a human being. Whether it is speed, strength, endurance, or other various physical qualities, he has become very abnormal. Now Nick Fury no longer compares him with Captain America Steve Rogers in the records, but starts comparing him with the Hulk. One can imagine Lin Feng's current strength level in their hearts. Especially the people from S.H.I.E.L.D., who know a lot about the masters in this world, thought for a long time, maybe the Hulk, whose power seems to have no upper limit, can compete with him. Other vampires or werewolves, I'm afraid not. They will all be blown up by his punch. They didn't know that Lin Feng only integrated 50% of the template of the motherland at first. As time went by, his integration of the template of the motherland became deeper and deeper, and his strength improved rapidly, and he became more and more unconventional. Go further and further. Tony Stark even privately used a supercomputer to simulate what level of weapons would be possible if he wanted to attack Lin Feng. There is almost no way. Conventional light weapons cannot even break Lin Feng's defense in the simulation. Other heavy weapons, let alone whether they can break Lin Feng's defense, are very difficult to catch up with Lin Feng. According to the calculation results, as long as he was not directly bombarded, even if he was only a few meters away from the bombing site, the splash damage would not be enough to kill Lin Feng. The highest level of the simulation involved the use of tactical nuclear weapons, which also failed in the end. Because it was impossible to completely lock Lin Feng. Lin Feng not only has super strength, super endurance, but also super speed. It is very difficult to lock him down. He even has a kind of intuition called warrior's intuition, which was gained from the martial arts system he practiced, and he can sense the crisis in advance. If Shang Sheng wants to deal with him, he will sense it in advance. Although he can't directly know what will happen, there will be a strong feeling reminding him to leave where he is. The combination of these makes Lin Feng not only invincible, but also extremely difficult to encircle and kill. It is even possible to use an entire heavy armored division to besiege him, but he will break out of the siege. This is the result of a supercomputer simulation based on Lin Feng's personal physical fitness input by Tony Stark. All in all, he is a super pervert. This analysis result was also shared with S.H.I.E.L.D. by Tony Stark. Although Tony Stark is still too proud to join the Avengers, the cooperation between the two parties has already begun in full swing. However, Lin Feng, who was like a monster in their eyes, was already extremely fearful just by mentioning Ancient One, Thanos, and Dormammu. He didn't even dare to step into Ji Yuyi's sight and wanted to hide far away. From this comparison, although they still don't know how terrifying these people are, they can also guess that this so-called Heavenly Father level is far more terrifying than they imagined. Everyone looked at this scene and suddenly felt bad. Jarvis, create 3 new files, namely the Supreme Mage Ancient One, Thanos, and the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu. Search the internet for all information about these names to see if there are any relevant records. Tony Stark said immediately. He felt that if these people were mixed in the crowd, they might leave some clues, such as the myths and legends about Asgard left by the Nordic Heavenly Palace in the world. Okay, sir, the file has been created and the search has begun. Do you need me to separate a task module and continue the search? Jarvis asked. Although Jarvis's computing power is very powerful, the amount of information on the internet in this world is so huge that even if there is a supercomputer behind it to search, it will still take a long time to search. It requires long-term, permanent retrieval, sorting out all relevant information, and sending one copy to me every day, if there is any relevant information. Tony Stark said immediately. Yes, sir, Jarvis answered. Tony, if you have one, send me a copy. Nick Fury also heard it and immediately asked to share it. Yeah, Tony Stark nodded and did not refuse. However, all these combined are not as dangerous as Doctor Strange himself. The universe destroyed by him is not old or young. Don't turn black. It is better to be a normal Doctor Strange. The abnormal Doctor Strange's brain is not normal either. There is no hero without strong willpower and deep obsession. If he takes the wrong path, he will often become a supervillain even more terrifying than an ordinary super criminal. In order to resurrect his lover, Dr. Darkstrange destroyed his own universe and wanted to destroy other universes. He has gone crazy. So it's best for Ji Yuyi's arrangement not to go wrong. A few years later, he will get into a car accident and become crippled. If it goes astray, things will be very serious. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but gasp. Just now, everyone said that they would place their hopes on Stephen Strange. The next moment, Lin Feng said, will he turn black? And after turning black, he would actually kill his own universe. So, I would like to ask, what kind of concept is the so-called collapse of the universe? To what extent does it count as collapse of the universe? Hawkeye Barton said a little in disbelief. The limit of what his brain can imagine is probably to use super high-tech, something like a star destroyer to destroy the entire planet. That is already an unimaginable power and an unimaginable level of technology. But destroying a universe, so how to do it? Can humans really do this? Everyone looked at each other in shock, because they couldn't imagine what it meant to kill their own universe and collapse other people's universes. It's not that they have no imagination, but that their current understanding of the power of science is simply incomprehensible. Even Tony Stark, who is the most scientifically literate, can't imagine that there is any power on the scientific side that can collapse the entire universe. Even if it exists in science fiction novels, it is even a very science fiction concept in science fiction novels, such as physical weapons, philosophical weapons, mathematical weapons, etc. It is difficult to imagine that these things can be used to destroy the entire universe. The universe is too vast. What humans can understand is only a small part of the universe. It is impossible to observe it with light, let alone destroy it. Everyone almost instinctively gasped. Science is obviously impossible. Even destroying the planet may take thousands or tens of thousands of years. To destroy the universe. Maybe humans won't have this ability until they die. As you can imagine, the magic side's abilities are so terrifying. The upper limit is a bit ridiculously high. And this Doctor Strange is the successor chosen by the Supreme Mage Ancient One, so it is very likely that Ancient One also has similar abilities. At this time, they seemed to understand a little bit why Lin Feng was so afraid of this Gu Yiwei. If you look at it from this perspective, it seems reasonable that the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu can swallow the earth in one bite. I just don't know how strong Thanos is. No wonder Lin Feng doesn't dare to interfere with Stephen Strange's path to becoming Doctor Strange. It turns out that if he cannot become Doctor Strange, then he will darken into the so-called Dark Strange, and will change from a superhero to a supervillain, or even it will destroy the universe. Nick Fury even gasped. With his original character, when faced with such an unstable character, who could turn dark at any time and become a huge threat at any time, he would usually control him if he could, and kill him if he couldn't. But there's really nothing he can do about Doctor Strange. Not to mention that the Supreme Mage Ancient One standing behind him is no longer something they can deal with. In the future, after Master Ancient One dies, they will have to deal with the terrifying Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu. Not to mention, if he becomes Doctor Strange according to the plan, then forget it. If the plan goes wrong and he becomes the so-called Dark Doctor Strange, then the entire universe may be killed by him. This person is really difficult. No wonder Lin Feng could only stay away from him. We still have to be careful when dealing with his problem. Tony Stark said. He's probably the toughest guy we've ever dealt with. Everyone nodded. Regardless of their strength, none of the others could be involved in such a wide range of things. It wouldn't matter if they were allowed to intervene, or if they didn't intervene. Moreover, we previously speculated that the concept of timeline mentioned in Lin Feng's diary, our understanding is about countless possibilities in the future, but now it seems that it is not a possibility, but that it may actually exist. Universe. Different timelines correspond to different universes. Tony Stark said. What do you want to say? Nick Fury asked a little confused. Tony Stark paused, and then said, what I want to say is that Lin Feng once mentioned in his diary that there may be many so-called wrong timelines that will be dealt with, and we are now dealing with so-called wrong timelines. In the timeline, for example, this Stephen Strange will become Doctor Strange to protect the Earth. If this is the correct timeline, then the wrong timeline should be that he made a mistake in the process and became the Dark Doctor Strange. Can we be sure that we are not on this wrong timeline now? Can we be sure that our future is not pointing to this wrong future? There are even many such wrong futures, then we should what to do? Everyone was silent after hearing this. There was no doubt that this was beyond what they could handle. After a moment, Nick Fury could only say, To use a saying from Lin Feng's hometown, we have no choice but to do our best to achieve the so-called correct timeline. Why do I feel that since Lin Feng's diary appeared, the problems we have to deal with have instantly changed from normal difficulty to hell level? I used to have to go on missions to deal with vampires, werewolves, or some terrorists at most, but now it's okay. No, shooting a god to death is to save the earth, save the universe, and even save the timeline. It's like playing a game. After leaving the novice village, the ultimate boss is waiting for me. This feeling is really terrible. Eagle Eye Barton couldn't help but complain. Everyone nodded in sympathy. Look at what kind of crisis this is. The simplest one is alien invasion, and then there is the crisis that the Earth will be swallowed up in one go, and the timeline, the entire universe will collapse. Crisis, I suddenly felt so powerless. They complained for a few words, and Lin Feng's diary was suddenly updated with a video. Doctor Strange was at the peak of his powers when he debuted, but later on he behaved like a rotten fish. Everyone's eyes lit up. Tony Stark quickly clicked on the video in the diary, and then projected it, and everyone began to watch it. The first thing that caught the eye was Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange, and Baron Mordo, who were dressed in mage costumes. However, the two of them were very embarrassed at this time. Everyone could see that they must have just experienced a big battle. At this time, there is another projection not far from Tony Stark in the basement of the mansion. It is the information about Stephen Strange that Jarvis just found from the internet. In it, Stephen Strange she is very coquettish in wearing various high-end custom-made suits, each of which looks expensive. It may even cost more than what Tony Stark wears, because Tony Stark is a typical American newly rich man who doesn't pay much attention to clothing. Just the first glance made Tony Stark feel uncomfortable. Nothing else. He was just a pretender. When he met another pretender who was even more pretentious, he really met his match. Although this Stephen Strange is just a surgeon and his wealth is less than a fraction of his pretentious style is no worse than him. This is just pretending to be dissatisfied with each other. In the diary video, Stephen Strange dressed as a mage has a feeling of losing his glitz and being extremely vicissitudes of life. Without the extremely flashy suit, he is finally not so annoying. In the picture, there are ruins everywhere. It seems to be in a city, but I don't know where it is, but I can fully imagine how intense it is. In the teleportation array, Doctor Strange Stephen Strange came out, looking quite depressed. What he had just experienced was undoubtedly a huge shock to him. She's dead. At this time, Doctor Strange Stephen Strange said, "You're right, she's not who I thought she was." Baron Mordo said sadly. Only then did he realize that what Doctor Strange told him before was true. Something is wrong with the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. Chapter 41. She is actually very conflicted. Doctor Strange said. He also felt uncomfortable. He somewhat understood Ji, but he knew this was wrong. Dark space is full of dangers. After hearing this, Baron Mordo said without mercy, "What if she was swallowed up? She told us not to do that, but she drew energy from it and maintained it for several 100 years of life." This conversation is very informative. Everyone listens carefully. Dark space. Is it the dark dimension that Lin Feng mentioned before? Someone draws energy from the dark space and can even maintain a lifespan of hundreds of years. There is no doubt that if this news spreads to the world, countless powerful people will go crazy. They are trying their best to live forever, but there is no other way but to choose technology to extend their lives. Even Nick Fury knows better. He knows that in human society, there is a group of guys called the Hagi clan. These people are high-ranking people and are highly respected and powerful bosses in human society. But he willingly works for vampires in order to be embraced by these vampires in the future and become a vampire himself. Although he became bloodthirsty and became unable to move during the day, his lifespan was greatly enhanced. They don't see it as a curse, but as a gift. These people are mixed in human society, providing vampires with great convenience of movement. This is also one of the most difficult things for him to deal with over the years when dealing with vampires. In order to live forever, these Hagi tribes even gave up their dignity as human beings. If they knew there was a way to live forever, even in the so-called dark space full of dangers, they would definitely rush forward without hesitation. So who is she in these two people's mouths? Is it the Supreme Mage Ancient One? Everyone has some doubts in their hearts. But it is obvious that although energy can be extracted from the dark space, there must be very serious consequences, which is why the two of them are so repulsive to it. Faced with Baron Mordo's questioning, Dr. Stephen Strange could only defend himself and said, "She did what she thought was right. Sooner or later, you will pay the price. Haven't you noticed that it was precisely because of her forbidden actions that she brought countless fanatical supporters to Dormammu, and Cassius was the big mistake she made. Not only that, even we eventually became her pawns." Baron Mordo said with great sadness and anger. In his opinion, this was some kind of betrayal. He simply couldn't understand what Ji Yuyi did. It was a betrayal of the beliefs in his heart. And all these crises were brought about by Ji Yuyi, who violated his own beliefs and was sworn to by the mage. "The world is in danger," Baron Mordo said viciously. "These are all brought by Ji Yuyi. The temple has been destroyed, and the New York temple has been attacked twice." Dr. Strange said, "You know their next target." Baron Mordo is still pretentious about the so-called Ancient One absorbing energy in the dark space, right? But for Dr. Stephen Strange, what is really important is to deal with the current doomsday situation. Although he is older, he is more like a flower in a greenhouse that has not experienced wind and waves. He is too attached to the so-called darkness, light, justice, and evil. It's Hong Kong. Baron Mordo quickly revealed the location of the last temple. After all, although he hated Ji Yuyi's hypocrisy, he also knew what priorities were. "You once said to me that fighting feels like life is on the line. One day, it will be like this. It is like this today. I alone cannot defeat him." Dr. Strange looked at Mordo expectantly. "Baron." Baron Mordo nodded and agreed, and Dr. Strange also directly opened the portal. The two of them passed through the portal directly and came to Hong Kong. Portal. Everyone found it incredible to see that the mage actually had this ability. They didn't expect that this ability, which only existed in magic novels, actually existed. The scientific explanation is that the mage can create a stable small wormhole at any time to travel through. It is almost impossible for science to achieve such a step. The magic is amazing. At this time, Hong Kong was full of ruins. "The temple has collapsed," Dr. Strange said. Everyone outside the screen frowned as they looked at this scene. There is no doubt that the performance of the two people here can be said to be a high-stakes one. No wonder Stephen Strange will become Doctor Strange and the savior of the Earth. There is indeed a gap in this pattern. Everyone also reacted to this scene. Is this the time when the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu invaded the Earth as mentioned in Lin Feng's diary? Otherwise, it cannot be said that the world is in danger. Also, the temple mentioned by the two people also attracted Nick Fury's attention, and he silently recorded the term in his heart. The two temples have been destroyed, one of which is in New York, and the other should be in Hong Kong. What about the remaining place? Why did Dormammu destroy the temple during his invasion? There are literally 100,000 whys in his head. But there was no answer. Or is this temple related to whether Dormammu can come? These demon gods must be restrained by some kind of power, otherwise, in Lin Feng's words, Dormammu could even swallow the earth in one bite. What a terrifying power that is. This temple is most likely the key to preventing Dormammu from coming. He made up his mind to find these so-called temples, not to destroy them, but to protect them. Since it is speculated that these temples are the key to preventing Dormammu from coming, it is natural to find a way to protect them. He has never placed his hope on Doctor Strange. If possible, he still hopes to protect the Earth by himself. At this time, in the picture, there is endless darkness in the distance, flashing with various dark energies, and there are many lightnings transformed from dark energy, as if a terrifying dimension is coming. Even through the screen, everyone could feel a dark, evil aura coming towards their faces, which was extremely terrifying. They could even experience how evil the energy in this dark space was, and immediately understood how dangerous it was to absorb the energy from the dark space, as Baron Mordo said just now. His concerns are not unreasonable. At the same time, they were secretly surprised that the video in this diary could actually give them an immersive feeling, allowing them to fully feel how terrifying the dark energy in the dark space was. It can corrode people's hearts, stimulate the darkest parts of their hearts, distort their thoughts, and even mutate them. Is this the dark space? Tony Stark's face was extremely ugly. He could not imagine what he would do if he faced such an enemy in the future. Has the strength of Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension, reached the legendary Heavenly Father level. The endless dark energy is spreading out and is about to grind down the entire Hong Kong. It seems that everything is irreversible. It's too late, no one can stop him. Baron Mordo was in pain and despair, and there was no longer any chance in this world. No one can deal with Dormammu's true form. Facing Dormammu, the only option is to prevent its true form from coming and keep it out of the main universe. If its true form comes, the entire Earth will be doomed. Baron Mordo was completely desperate, but Doctor Stephen Strange was not desperate yet. He said, "That's not necessarily the case." He had already made a calculation in his mind and had an idea in his mind. As he spoke, he began to cast the spell, and the time gem hanging on his chest burst out with emerald green light. Nick Fury squinted his eyes. Faced with such a desperate situation, the will of both parties could be seen. Why was this black man not chosen as the successor by Ancient One, but Stephen Strange was able to become the one that Ancient One favored? Successor. The difference in quality between the two sides can be seen. Faced with a desperate situation, Baron Mordo would only say that it was over, and there was no hope for the Earth. But Doctor Strange will not give up and will fight until the last moment. This kind of willpower that will never give up until the last moment, no, even at the last moment, is the key to his great achievements in the future. Then they saw a scene that made them feel extremely shocked. However, Doctor Strange began to use the Time Stone. With the input of mana, everyone was horrified to see that Hong Kong had been completely destroyed. Streets are recovering at an alarming rate. No, seeing this scene, Cassius shouted quickly, but it was of no use. Even Cassius, who rushed over, fell back directly as time went backwards. Immediately, Doctor Strange cast a spell on Baron Mordo to prevent him from being affected by the Time Stone. Baron Mordo watched in shock as the street in front of him continued to recover, and time began to move backwards crazily. Everyone who read the diary looked at this picture in shock. Turn back time. Everyone took a breath of air and contributed to the warming of the Earth's climate. If this magic is a repair type, although it is surprising, it is still within the scope of their knowledge. After all, there are so many magic novels around the world, and there are many concepts about repair-type spells in them, but this one is different. It is not a use. Some kind of spell to repair, but directly turn back time. It is also effective for people. Cassius in the picture is obviously not completely affected by the Time Stone. He can still clearly know that time is going backwards, but the more this happens, the more unacceptable he feels. He tried every means to eradicate the Ancient One and destroyed 2 more temples. Even the temple in Hong Kong was just destroyed by him. But now, it has been restored by Doctor Stephen Strange using the Time Stone, so his work was not in vain. However, he could not interfere. The power of the Time Stone was fully demonstrated at this time. The spell is working, Doctor Strange said, shouting as he ran. We have one more chance. There is only one chance. Using the power of the Time Stone, he got one chance, but it was only one chance. If he failed, there would be nothing. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred, and a powerful light burst out from Cassia's body. He was struggling crazily. He could not let Doctor Strange destroy the liberation of the world that he had finally sought. Yes, for him, this is liberation. He is not doing bad things, but is trying to let the Earth and mankind achieve eternal transcendence. A moment later, Cassius actually broke free from the spell cast on him by the Time Stone. His strength was unimaginable. It only took him a few breaths to get rid of the effect of the time regression, and directly pursued him, knocking Doctor Strange to the ground with one blow. But he had no way to stop the passage of time, and all the buildings were repaired bit by bit from their broken state. In this continuous retreat of time, everything has become a fatal threat. Those cars that are going backwards and those houses that are constantly being repaired make everything look extremely beautiful. These mages are also fighting in this environment affected by the Time Stone. When everyone saw the battle of these mages in the video, they found it incredible. Is this the way these mages fight? While resisting the influence of time reversal, they attack each other. It's not scary. In particular, the many unique attack methods are eye-opening to everyone. And they also thought that as time went back, ordinary people did not have the abilities of these mages and did not know what had happened, so they might not know that such a war had ever happened here. This seems to explain why we have never known the existence of these mages, not even once. Nick Fury thought for a while, and seemed to understand why he had never known the existence of these mages. If these mages had such ability, they could turn back time again after the fight. So no matter how much damage they cause, there will ultimately be no trace to the outside world. Cold sweat suddenly broke out on his back. He thought, maybe they had encountered similar things before, a battle between good mages, but because time went back, they couldn't feel it. Just look at this picture and you will know that only mages can be exempted from the influence to a certain extent. Even mages will be affected. Only a very small number of people can escape the influence of this time regression. It is impossible for ordinary people to know whether they have been affected. Dr. Stephen Strange could only say helplessly, "It violates the laws of nature, I know it." He saw the Mage King breaking free from the influence of time reversal, and thought he was going to talk about it, so he quickly spoke. After all, when he used the time power of the Time Stone, he was severely punished by the Mage King, so he was naturally frightened, but at this time it was an expedient measure and there was no other way. In the picture, the Mage King looked at the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu in the terrifying Dark Dimension in the distance, and said, "Then disobey for a while." He is not a pedantic person. He naturally knows that using the Time Stone to violate the laws of nature is nothing compared to the survival of the Earth. If the Earth is gone, what will the laws of nature mean? When the temple is restored, they will come back. Doctor Strange said in judgment. "We must protect the temple, come on." Everyone understands that the success or failure of this matter depends on the survival of the temple. As long as the temple exists, sooner or later Dormammu can be driven out. But if the temple is gone, even if there is no Dormammu, there are other people. There are countless dimensional demons in the endless dimensions, and Dormammu is only the more powerful among them. At this time, Cassia also broke free from the wall and wanted to stop them. Everyone was knocked to the ground in an instant, and Doctor Strange's time retrieval was also directly interrupted. "Cheer up, Strange, get up and fight again, this matter should be settled," Baron Mordo said quickly. He and the Wizard King put on a fighting stance, trying to help Doctor Strange block Cassius and his followers who were chasing him from behind. "You can't defeat what is bound to happen," Cassia just said coldly. "It's so beautiful, a world beyond time, beyond death." He looked towards the boundless darkness in the distance. That was the place he yearned for, transcending life and death, the true eternity. That was the true destination in his heart. Beyond time. Hearing this sentence, Doctor Strange suddenly thought of something. He finally figured out how to fight against Dormammu. Then he flew directly into the dark dimension. Another one that can fly. Everyone's eyelids jumped at the sight. They had only seen Thor and Wonder Woman flying before. Obviously, Doctor Strange and Stephen Strange's flying ability was even more unrestrained. They didn't know how to do it, but they all thought in their hearts. Extremely envious. Even if Tony Stark can fly, it can only be achieved with the help of the power of the suit, otherwise he is just an ordinary person. But Stephen Strange, who is also just an ordinary person, can fly after learning magic. How can he not be envied by a few people? After all, flying is really the ultimate dream of mankind. In order to realize this dream, there were sky lanterns in ancient times, and later there were airships, airplanes, and later spaceships and so on. Everyone sighed. Magic is really convenient, it can open portals and fly. But at this time, when the picture accompanied Doctor Stephen Strange into the dark dimension, it suddenly became extremely grand. The boundless silence and dark energy of the dark dimension almost made everyone feel oppressive and breathless for an instant. Countless huge mutated, cancer-like planets are scattered throughout the dark space, and Doctor Stephen Strange is flying among them like an ant. Cassius on Earth saw this scene and just said mockingly, "With him gone, even Strange will abandon you and surrender to the power of Dormammu." This shows that he is right. Darkness is eternal, darkness is everything. Yi is wrong, he is right. Seeing this scene, Baron Mordo felt desperate, and the Earth might really be finished. The people outside the screen watched this scene. Although they knew from Lin Feng's previous words that Doctor Stephen Strange had defeated Dormammu, they also felt cold sweat in their hearts. The current situation looks almost unsolvable. And in the picture, in the boundless dark universe, that weird, uncomfortable, breathless dark universe seems to be in the body of a terrifying creature, and every planet is a huge cell, which makes people look extremely uncomfortable. The life force of the entire universe has been sucked dry, which is completely different from the empty universe of the main universe. Faced with all this, Dr. Stephen Strange did not hesitate at all and used the Time Stone to cast a spell to freeze time at this moment. He had already thought of a way to face Dormammu. A moment later, behind him, a human-like face appeared. Dormammu appeared. His terrifying appearance made people frightened just by looking at it. Just a head is bigger than a planet. What a shocking scene this is. At this time, everyone had an intuitive understanding of the Lord of the Dark Dimension mentioned in Lin Feng's diary. Even if a dimension is not the main universe, it contains countless planets. To be able to become the master of such a dimension, Dormammu's power is simply terrifying to the extreme. And for the first time, everyone realized the threat of these dimensional demons. For the first time, I truly felt what terrible existence these magicians had blocked for mankind in these years. But similarly, in his diary, Lin Feng recorded that the Ancient One who could compete with Dormammu must have at least a similar level of strength. A picture instantly appeared in their minds. In the small pond of the earth, they were jumping around, thinking that they were the masters of this small pond. Unexpectedly, there was something hidden under the water. A prehistoric giant crocodile. Faced with such a terrifying existence, Dr. Stephen Strange, who was already mentally prepared, was still frightened. However, he was not an ordinary person after all. He quickly calmed down and stared at the sky. The terrifying face among them. Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate terms. Dr. Stephen Strange said. You are here to die. Your world belongs to me, just like other worlds. The person condensed from the dark energy is extremely ferocious and terrifying. As the Lord of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu has never seen any kind of enemy. How could he listen to such a small, ant-like human being? Even countless years ago, he was one of these ant-like humans, but that was so long ago that it seemed like a previous life. Having been blocked from the outside of the earth by Ancient One for so many years, I was just one step away but unable to step in. And all this is finally coming to an end now. In an instant, Dr. Strange was killed by Dormammu. Dr. Strange launched a magic shield to block it, but there was no way at all. Under the crushing power of Dormammu, any of his defenses were meaningless. That's it. Dead. Tony Stark watched Dr. Strange being instantly blasted to pieces, and his heart was full of disbelief, because he also expected to see Dr. Strange fight back and achieve what Lin Feng said in his diary, forcing back the darkness. The great achievements of the Dimension Lord Dormammu are not bad now, but he was sprayed to death. And this is the protagonist Lin Feng talks about. Do you understand the value of the protagonist? Is this Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu so terrifying? But at this moment, Lin Feng's barrage suddenly floated across the diary. On the 1001 Ways Dr. Strange Can Die. Everyone was a little confused, but they soon understood. Could this mean that Dr. Strange had many completely different ways to die? Are these incorrect timelines? Will you die many times? Tony Stark said incredulously at this time. But he is already dead. How can he still be resurrected? And this Dormammu is too terrifying. He easily killed one of the protagonists in Lin Feng's mouth. At present, he can't deal with such a being at all, and he doesn't even dare to think about it. Even as smart as he was, he couldn't figure out how to deal with this Dormammu, how to make Dormammu retreat. As for defeat, it is basically impossible to defeat. And this is the horror of the so-called Heavenly Father level boss. They haven't figured out what the so-called Heavenly Father level is yet, but that doesn't stop them from feeling some of the horrors of the Heavenly Father level. But why does such a big man have to stare at the Earth? Tony Stark said in disbelief. Judging from the position of the Earth in the universe, let alone the center of the universe, even if it is within the Milky Way, it belongs to the countryside within the countryside, a small and broken place that needs resources but not resources, and needs technology but not technology. But such a small and broken place actually produced a big boss like the Supreme Mage Ancient One on the magic side, and was targeted by a terrifying existence like Dormammu. He really couldn't figure it out, because reality requires a certain degree of logic. Even on Earth, only if you discover oil will the US military breed. Why is it that there is nothing in this small place, and this horrible existence has arisen? What's up? But before everyone could think about it, because they saw a very bizarre scene next, Doctor Strange Stephen Strange, who was supposed to be dead, reappeared, as if the Doctor Strange they saw dead just now was just an illusion. Is it an illusion? Doctor Strange Stephen Strange in the picture just looked at the timestamp left by the time stone on his wrist, and then spoke to Dormammu in front of him again. Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Why did Doctor Strange appear, and then repeated what he just said again? This was completely different from what they thought. Facing Doctor Strange who suddenly appeared, Dormammu said coldly, "You came here to die. Your world belongs to me now." But as soon as he finished speaking, something felt wrong, because he realized that he seemed to have said this. What happened? Is it a hallucination? Dormammu said in disbelief. With his strength as a father-level boss who is now integrated with the dark dimension, how can he still produce hallucinations? No one in the world can cast hallucinations on him, not even the Ancient One, neither can that annoying human mage. No, this is reality. Doctor Strange said calmly. Very good. Dormammu was enraged and killed Doctor Strange again with one blow. The strength of the two sides was too different. Let alone Doctor Strange, even the Supreme Mage Ancient One would not be his opponent in this dark dimension. But as soon as he killed Doctor Strange, he discovered that another identical Doctor Strange floated over from above. Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate terms. And this Doctor Strange Stephen Strange also said loudly. I seem to understand a little bit about the so-called 1001 ways to die. Tony Stark couldn't help but say. Everyone suddenly realized it, but this scene was still scary. What the hell is going on? Dormammu was also shocked. He finally realized something was wrong. He had killed Doctor Strange so many times in a row, but every time he just finished killing him, there would be another one. They all appear exactly the same and cannot be killed cleanly. When Doctor Strange Stephen Strange used time magic just now, even Cassius and the others were able to resist to a certain extent. Although they could not completely resist the influence of time magic, they could feel that time was being turned back. And let alone Dormammu, what kind of strength is he? Until now, he still can't see where the problem lies. Just like the ability you gave Cassius from your world. Doctor Strange said very plainly. He had completely awakened to how to deal with this powerful opponent who was so powerful that he could not match it. If he were to fight head-on, let alone him, even his teacher Master Ji Yuyi would not be able to defeat him in the dark dimension. But the teacher's method is to use the three temples to block the arrival of Dormammu, so that the dark energy seeping out of Dormammu will be much easier to deal with. And he also has his own way, which is the time stone. I also brought some power from my side. Doctor Strange said calmly. That's time, endless looping time. Doctor Strange used his only trump card, which was simple but undoubtedly very useful. Maybe there is no way to completely block Dormammu's perception. He is the only existence in the world and cannot be reset by the time flow, but because of this, he has some chance of winning. There is no doubt that these words completely angered Dormammu, and even Dormammu couldn't help but directly formed a form in the universe, and formed a huge hand to attack Doctor Strange. It fell down. You are so brave. Dormammu is furious, and his huge palms can even blow up the entire planet. No, Doctor Strange had just finished saying this when he was slapped to death by Dormammu. However, this death was just the beginning of his countless deaths, but it was not the end. Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate. The same beginning, the same Doctor Strange, here he comes again, flying down from above with his own time loop. You can't always cycle like this. Dormammu roared. It was unreasonable that he was actually plotted by a small human being, and that he was trapped in his own time. There was a bit of fear in his voice, because he was also afraid that he would really be trapped in this endless time loop. Even if he killed the man in front of him 1,000 times or 10,000 times, what would happen? How about it? After hearing this, Doctor Strange Stephen Strange just said very plainly, actually, I can, isn't that what it is now? You and I are trapped in the same moment, in an infinite loop. Dormammu was furious. If he had known that this man was like this, he would have killed him immediately. But he was still plotted against by Doctor Strange. Dormammu was furious and roared, then you will die countless times. Yes, but people on Earth will survive. Doctor Strange said calmly. But you will have to suffer. Dormammu roared angrily, trying to scare Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange just smiled faintly and said, "Misery is an old friend." He used to be a pampered person, and could be said to be a very typical American elite middle class. Although he was far from comparable to wealthy people like Tony Stark, he was still glamorous. However, he has suffered more recently, perhaps more than in his entire life, and he has gradually gotten used to it and become numb. But as soon as he said these words, Dormammu slapped him to death in anger. "Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate terms. Dormammu, 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 Dormammu, Dormammu. ... Next, everyone finally saw the 1001 ways Doctor Strange died, and he was beaten to death in various ways. "Stop it." Dormammu roared that he was trying to stop this time loop. He could kill Doctor Strange 1,000, 10,000, or even millions or tens of millions of times anytime and anywhere. But what's the use of this? If he can't break this time loop, he will spend endless time with this tiny human being in front of him. "You can never win," Dormammu roared, with a hint of fear in his voice. "Yeah, but I can afford to lose." Doctor Strange stood up from the ground in a very embarrassed state, but his spirit was still strong, even if he had to die countless times. Lost once, do it again, do it again, do it again, forever. Doctor Strange stood up slowly, panting heavily, but said confidently, "Make you my prisoner." "No, stop it, stop it." Dormammu roared, broke through the defense, and slapped Doctor Strange to death with a roar. He is really afraid. If this continues, he will really be trapped in this reincarnation forever. This is not a cage, but it is better than a cage. Even if he is as strong as Dormammu, he cannot endure such a life. "Stop, let me out." Dormammu finally compromised. He realized that no matter how many times he killed the human in front of him, 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times, or 10,000 times, he would still come out of another place on time. This man's will is strong enough to pass the exam. "No, I'm here to negotiate terms." Doctor Strange was not so anxious at this time, because he knew that the offensive and defensive momentum had changed. This time, Dormammu finally did not kill Doctor Strange at the first meeting. He knew that he could not completely break the will of the man in front of him. On the contrary, his will was about to collapse under the torture of the man in front of him. He could only ask, "What kind of conditions do you want to negotiate? Take your fanatics and leave the earth, stop doing evil in my world, and never come back." Doctor Strange breathed a sigh of relief and finally saw the hope of success. He said, "If you agree, I will stop this cycle for a while." The screen turned again and came to the city of Hong Kong again. At this time, Hong Kong was in a stasis of time. Baron Mordo climbed up from the ground. He said, "Cheer up, Strange, keep fighting. This matter should be settled. It's so beautiful, a world beyond time, beyond death," Cassia said with longing as he looked at the world of the dark universe in the distance. It was the eternal world that transcended death that he yearned for. But this scene seemed a little strange to everyone reading the diary, because the same scene had already happened once before. So, this is the time being reset. Everyone looked at each other. It must be like this, otherwise, why did what happened before happen again? I just feel extremely magical in my heart. This time magic is really amazing. At this time, Doctor Strange slowly floated down and looked at everyone calmly. At this time, Cassius, who had been looking at the dark dimension in fascination just now, finally realized that something was wrong and quickly shouted, "What did you do?" Although his strength was not enough to completely notice that time had been reset, not everyone was Dormammu after all, but he also noticed some kind of fluctuation in time magic, which was very wrong. "My terms have been negotiated," Doctor Strange said with a smile. This time, he finally won. After dying countless times, he finally ended the dark incident of Dormammu's arrival. Although it was done in this way, there was a gap compared to his own teacher's direct defeat of Dormammu, but it was not bad. The Ancient One relied on his own tyrannical strength to repel Dormammu. Although he relied on the power of the three major temples to prevent Dormammu from coming in person, it was still extraordinary. After all, although Ancient One has lived for hundreds or thousands of years and seems to be an old antique, he is still a junior in front of Dormammu. Dormammu has become a super senior in the magical world of the Dimension Demon in the distant super ancient Earth. Woolen cloth. Soon, Cassius realized something was wrong, because his body was turning into powder, and he said with a somewhat horrified voice, "What is this?" "This is what you want," Doctor Strange said with a smile. "As a part of Dormammu's life, you may not like it." Immediately afterwards, Cassius and his followers turned into ash and merged with the dark multiverse. The video ends here, but the shock it brought to everyone is not over yet, but has just begun. Everyone was a little bit indifferent to what Lin Feng said in his diary that Dormammu would swallow the earth in one bite. The earth is too big, no one can do it. For example, even if the technological side has the means to destroy a planet, it is destruction, and it is not at the same level as swallowing a planet in one bite. But now, Dormammu appeared in front of them. His head alone was as huge as a planet. The scene where Dormammu's huge face appeared was enough to shock everyone. Even if the planets in this universe are big or small, no matter how small the planet is, it cannot be compared to humans. This is just Dormammu's head. If his true body were to appear, what a terrifying existence it would be. Especially since such a terrifying existence has no entity yet. How to fight this? There is no chance of winning. The most powerful means for human beings is nothing more than nuclear bombs. But facing the existence of this level of terror, nuclear bombs have no choice at all. The diary entry is over. Everyone looked at each other. I now fully understand Lin Feng's fear. We cannot deal with enemies of this level. Let's let Stephen Strange deal with it, Hawkeye Barton said. He was originally at the bottom of the Avengers Alliance in terms of combat prowess, and even compared to his widowed sister, he might not be able to win. There is no way they can deal with a villain of this level. But we didn't expect that Stephen Strange would eventually use this method to force Dormammu back, Coulson Ankai said. If it were us, there would be no chance of winning. Human weapons cannot even destroy the Earth. At most, they can only wipe out life on the planet. For the planet itself, it is just scratching the itch, let alone an existence of this level. Terrible. Now we have to thank those magicians for building 3 temples to help us block Dormammu, Nick Fury said. But we also have to ensure the safety of the 3 temples. As long as the temples are okay, this Dormammu should not be able to come. Otherwise, he should have come long ago. Those few don't seem to be good people. Find a way to monitor it. It's not that Nick Fury doesn't want to take action against Cassius, it's just that he is a magician after all, and the magician's methods are too strange, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. Although he was worried about them destroying the 3 temples, he did not want to easily provoke these dark side magicians. And in the end, there is one insurance, that is Stephen Strange, who will become Doctor Strange in the future. The 3 temples mentioned here are one in New York, one in Hong Kong, and one I don't know where, Tony Stark said. But it doesn't matter. Since they are all temples, they probably have similar architectural styles. As long as you find one of them, you can probably deduce the location of other temples. The location just now is in Hong Kong, so you can start here. Jarvis, search according to the appearance of the building in the video to determine the location of the Hong Kong temple, and then scan and model the buildings in New York to see if there are any similar buildings, Tony Stark said. Okay, sir, Jarvis said. The comparison results have come out. The location in the video has been locked. Further comparison with nearby buildings has been completed to determine the location of the temple in the video. Jarvis quickly gave the answer. A 3-dimensional projection of the temple appeared in front of everyone. After a while, even the New York temple was searched because the architectural styles were the same. By this method a 3rd temple was likewise identified, in London. Now all 3 temples appeared. Now the locations of the 3 temples have appeared. I will send them to you later, but I hope you don't get close and don't interfere, Tony Stark said. Because these 3 temples will be destroyed, the Supreme Mage Ancient One will also die, and if this Stephen Strange cannot become Doctor Strange because of our interference, then we cannot afford the consequences. If you successfully become Doctor Strange, he will be able to resist any disaster no matter how big it happens. When he said this, Tony Stark also felt very desperate, because he was not a person accustomed to placing his hopes on others. If the sky fell, there would be a tall person to hold it up, and he was the tall person. Now he found that he couldn't stand it, and couldn't even fight a little. So we can only place our hope on the surgeon. This feeling was desperate and helpless, but he could only choose to accept it. From what he knew so far, there was really no way to deal with Dormammu on the technological side. Yeah, Nick Fury nodded. Obviously he thought so too. Not interfering if possible is an uncomfortable choice for a person like him who has a strong desire for control. But the key point, I think, is still on the pendant on Steven's chest. I think that although this time magic is amazing, it is obviously not something that everyone can do. Nick Fury thought for a while, and then said, otherwise, Dormammu should not be a threat, and those followers of Dormammu don't seem to know the relevant spells at all, and there is no way to completely resist time magic. Even Dormammu will be affected by time magic. Control it, I think, that shouldn't be Steven's own strength. Everyone nodded, agreeing with this judgment. Maybe this is some secret treasure of those mages. After all, in this kind of magic novels, don't there always be such settings? For example, Lord of the Rings or something. Tony Stark shrugged and said. But what exactly is inside, probably only Lin Feng knows. This time is not without gain. At least we know that there is such a group of magicians. Nick Fury said. He originally wanted to get in touch with these magicians to see if there was any way to learn some magic or recruit some talents. But when I thought about the consequences of changing the timeline, I stopped thinking about it. Knowing the existence of Dormammu is undoubtedly a great pressure for everyone, especially when they cannot deal with it. It's night, another sleepless night. For Lin Feng, life is still going on in an orderly manner. After a period of adaptation, he has been able to fully adapt to the basic template of the motherland. In terms of strength, he has completely reached 10 times what he was when he was only injected with the super soldier serum. His other speed and endurance have reached astonishing levels. And he could feel that he was just one step away from giving birth to many of the superpowers of his motherland, or what the Chinese like to call magical powers. In this state, Lin Feng is no longer afraid of encirclement and suppression by small-scale armies, and he is not even afraid of encirclement and suppression by medium-sized armies. However, after all, he is still a mortal body, and light weapons cannot do anything to him. He cannot even break through defenses, but humans, there are also various heavy weapons that can threaten him to a certain extent. Many people have no concept of human heavy weapons. Even in movies and TV series, the terrifying power of human heavy weapons will be weakened, and even ridiculous situations such as zombies defeating human armies will occur. In fact, in reality, human heavy weapons, the power is much more terrifying than shown in movies and TV shows. So Lin Feng is not floating anymore. Especially since the water in this world is very deep, he naturally doesn't want to stand out. After all, he doesn't have the aura of a protagonist. For example, Captain America Steve Rogers, in terms of strength, is really not enough in front of Lin Feng, but he has the aura of the protagonist to protect him, so he can even fight anyone 50-50. But Lin Feng knows better. To be precise, the only Captain America in the correct sacred timeline has the aura of the protagonist. The other Captain Americas do not have such good treatment. Those who turned into zombies or were attacked and died. All kinds of tragedy. The essential reason for achieving this protagonist halo is that TVA cut out the timeline of his failure behind the scenes. For example, what if Captain America failed to inject the super soldier serum? What else can be done? TVA just cuts out this wrong timeline. It's so simple and crude. This is actually how the so-called protagonist halo of the protagonists on the sacred timeline comes about. And if you are not the protagonist on the sacred timeline, it will be too easy to die and be killed by the quacks. Just watch Wanda kill the Illuminati on her own in the 616 universe. A superhero without the protagonist's aura is as brittle as a crispy college student. Even a being as powerful as Captain Marvel, a father-level being who claims to be able to compete with Thanos, faced Wanda and died without saying a word. And judging from the outrageous changes in this universe, it is obviously not the so-called sacred timeline. Although Lin Feng didn't know why the current TVA didn't come to cut off this timeline, he knew that this was definitely not a sacred timeline. Everyone's life was actually very fragile. Without a health lock, one had to keep a low profile. Boom! There was a loud bang, echoing throughout the entire practice room. A terrifying sonic boom swept across. It was Lin Feng who was practicing. Since becoming financially independent, he bought an abandoned factory near the community where he lived, and after simple decoration, turned it into his practice room. After his strength has reached his level, if he unleashes all his strength, punches and kicks can produce extremely terrifying winds. If the space is small, it will easily shatter glass, furniture and the like. With this punch, his own strength was pushed to the extreme, and a steel plate in front of him exploded on the spot. This also marked that he had reached the state of Danjin in Chinese martial arts. At this state, he felt a vigorous force boiling in his body. To be precise, he felt transformation at the cellular level. It's a slow evolution. No wonder it is said that from Hua Jin to Dan Jin, it is like an ape to a human, and from a human to an immortal. It is completely different from Ming Jin, Dark Jin, and Hua Jin, which are simply techniques of energy generation. Lin Feng felt the feeling inside his body. The energy has reached this point, and there is even a certain degree of genetic transformation. In particular, Lin Feng's physical fitness is very abnormal. In ordinary history, those beings who have achieved Danjin, such as Zhang Sanfang, Zhang Daoling, Shang Yu and others, their physical transformations cannot catch up with Lin Feng's transformation. It's a bit like the super soldier serum, evolving from the genetic level. The starting point is different. Lin Feng is now at a level of terror that no one else can reach after his Danjin transformation. According to the transformation of this genetic level, he may be able to produce it himself without drawing the subsequent motherland template through lottery. Supernatural powers, laser eyes, flying abilities, etc. can all be activated independently. That's incredible. It means that he himself has unlimited possibilities, and can even get rid of his dependence on the diary lottery. Although it is only possible, it is better than having no hope at all. This made him more determined to pursue the path of national martial arts. He was originally greedy for the increase in combat power that practicing national martial arts could bring him, but now this is no longer the main reason. Now the main thing is to discover that this is actually a feasible way to develop one's own potential. Although there are few travelers on this road through the ages, it is still a visible road. Lin Feng has never been too ambitious. Even if he can get stronger abilities, he will not give up. Suddenly, there was a rush of footsteps outside the factory. Then there was a huge roar, the door was blown open, and the terrifying air wave caused by the explosion swept away. Immediately afterwards, a group of people wearing camouflage uniforms and professional equipment comparable to those of the American Special Forces rushed in. The leader was tall, wearing strange tights, and the hood on his head was painted with circles like an arrow target. The identity of the visitor is already revealed. It is none other than Kingpin's #1 thug, Palladium Eyes. Lin Feng patted the dust on his body and looked at the Palladium Eyes and his men who rushed in directly with submachine guns and rocket launchers, and his expression became condensed. There is no doubt that this is where Palladium Eyes found his trace. During this period of time, since he became a citizen of the motherland, he has fought against Kingpin's crimes more than once. To him, it was just a matter of convenience. He was different from a street hero like Spider-Woman who dedicated himself to fighting against Kingpin. Specializing in picking the big ones, after a few times, Kingpin lost at least hundreds of millions of dollars. He enjoys this game too. However, there must be traces wherever he goes. Jin Bing is not a fool. He is extremely capable and has very strong financial and material resources and connections, so in the end he was able to catch some traces. Come to the door. Kingpin can be called the underground emperor of the entire New York, and even has extremely huge power in the entire United States. Although there are not many extraordinary masters under his command, there are ordinary elite personnel such as the United States Marine Corps and Special Forces. A lot of. He can even get the most professional equipment for these people, which can be called a small army. This time, there were hundreds of people who broke in directly. The leader, Palladium, was a little stunned when he saw Lin Feng's look. He obviously didn't expect that the Asian young man in front of him was actually the native of the country who ruined many of their businesses. Although Jin Bing traced this place based on clues, he did not know Lin Feng's identity. It's really not polite to break into the owner's house without permission. Lin Feng's eyes boiled with murderous intent. Now that this place is destroyed, the commotion caused will not be small, and it will be troublesome to deal with it when the time comes. The most important thing is that Lin Feng does not want to involve his family in this matter. Many superheroes choose to remain anonymous because they don't want to reveal their identities. Superheroes who have had their identities exposed have always had bad endings, and often end up implicating their relatives and friends. Even after Tony Stark publicly admitted his identity, in Iron Man 3, Dr. Killian sent people to blow up the mansion, almost burying people inside. To be honest, without the protection of the protagonist's aura, he would have died in the mansion on the spot. So if before, Lin Feng's mentality was somewhat of a game in the world, and he didn't take Jin Bin seriously, then now, Jin Bin can track his practice room, and now he can see his face. Sooner or later, his family members will be found. This is something Lin Feng cannot tolerate. Thinking of this, the murderous intention in Lin Feng's heart began to boil. Kill. Palladium Eyes did not hesitate. In fact, before tracing here, they also viewed multiple live videos. Among them, Lin Feng's strength can be said to be very amazing, especially the fighting techniques. He should have learned the Chinese martial arts. Palladium Eye himself is considered a fighting master, so it is easy to see that Lin Feng's fighting techniques include a variety of Chinese martial arts fighting techniques. This kind of fighting technique combined with Lin Feng's previous display of strength that has almost reached the peak of human physique, makes him an extremely dangerous person in his eyes. In this case, he had no intention of capturing him and questioning him. He would attack directly first. However, although he thought he was well prepared and made arrangements based on Lin Feng's combat power, in fact he still completely underestimated Lin Feng. Da 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 da. There was a burst of submachine gun fire at the scene. During this process, Lin Feng showed extremely terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, he completely avoided the fire of these submachine guns. First of all, he targeted those with portable rocket launchers. If they were allowed to bomb indiscriminately, the factory would really be finished. He took out the marbles from his pocket. This was the long-range attack method he prepared for himself before he evolved long-range attack methods such as Cyclops. These marbles are made of a certain alloy and are very strong. At this time, Lin Feng exerted unimaginable power in his hands. Call out! A shrill sound broke through the air, and a gingy-armed man holding a rocket launcher behind him groaned and fell down. A bloody hole was directly blasted out of his forehead. Palladium's eyes instantly felt like the hair on his head stood on end. He was the strongest among everyone, so he also had the strongest sense of danger. Almost instantly, he felt how scary the person in front of him was. With such a ghostly speed, the randomly thrown marbles can actually exceed the speed of sound. The shrill sound of breaking through the air is clearly the sound of a sonic boom after exceeding the speed of sound. Is this human? He is also a master of weapon throwing, but he is definitely not as good as Lin Feng. To be precise, he is a master of skills, while Lin Feng is simply outclassed in this aspect. He relied entirely on his super terrifying dynamic vision, coupled with inhuman hand strength, to achieve such outrageous effects. However, in such a short period of time that he was shocked, Lin Feng used a few marbles in a group to kill all the armed men holding rocket launchers in just a few breaths. Kill him, open fire! Palladium Eyes shouted in horror. After all, he is just a standard villain among street heroes. In terms of strength, he has reached the pinnacle of humanity. Facing an inhuman superhuman like Lin Feng, he has no chance of winning. Lin Feng's figure was like a ghost, and he appeared in front of the armed men in an instant. Using the technique of beating a cow from across the mountain, he punched a hole in their body armor with one punch. A piece of their backs instantly protruded and was punched by Lin Feng. Blast and kill. Anyone in front of him will be punched one by one. More than 100 skilled special forces level armed personnel, coupled with luxurious firepower, could fight against thousands of terrorists, but they were still no match for Lin Feng and were killed in just a moment. Empty. At this time, Lin Feng fully demonstrated the combat skills he had learned during this period. But this is still not his limit. If laser eyes are developed in the future and they all die with one glance, it will be much more convenient than now. This is the fundamental reason why Lin Feng is so low-key now. Although he has taken the first step towards not being a human being, he is still far from being invincible. Faced with such a fast slaughter, even if his psychological quality was as strong as Palladium Eyes, he was frightened to death. In a matter of seconds, Lin Feng punched out. In an instant, a terrifying wind formed, and almost instantly, Palladium Eye was about to be killed with one punch. Palladium Eyes was unable to resist at all, as if he had encountered a wild beast, intimidated by Lin Feng's momentum and unable to move at all. Just when he thought his head was going to explode with this punch, he saw the sandbag-sized fist stopped a centimeter in front of him. Only then did he realize that his whole body was soaked in cold sweat, as if he had just been fished out of the water. At this time, this super criminal, who regarded life and death as child's play, truly felt for the first time what it means to be terrified between life and death. Although he usually disregards life and death when performing tasks, he thinks that he is not afraid of death. But being shot to death and dying in the hands of Lin Feng, a humanoid beast, were both deaths, but they were not the same experience at all. It turns out that death is such a terrible thing. Now, finally saved. For the first time, Palladium felt that living was such a beautiful thing. He used to think that he was not afraid of death, and being great was just a hole. But now he understands that death is different from death. Now he can no longer afford to resist at all. Take me to Kingpin, you can live, otherwise, you have to die. Lin Feng said. If the Palladium Eye just accidentally discovered its foothold, then it would just kill all of them. But looking at the people who are fully armed to kill people, it is definitely not just an accidental discovery. Most of the time, Jin Bin will do this. Got it too. Now that Kingpin knows, this house game should finally be over. Spider-Woman couldn't deal with Jin Bin. To be precise, it was difficult to deal with Jin Bin, but that didn't mean that Lin Feng couldn't deal with Jin Bin either. No matter how many transformations Kingpin undergoes, his own fighting ability is a bit outrageous, but compared with the inhumane Lin Feng, it is still not good enough. In the end, he is just a villain in a street hero story. Palladium nodded with difficulty at this time. Facing such a terrifying Lin Feng, did he have any other choice? No more. He can only choose to accept it. At this time, in a manor in the suburbs of New York, a huge bald man who looked like a little giant suddenly stood up from his position and stared at the surveillance video. These images were uploaded from the cameras on the helmets of the armed personnel. He never expected that Palladium Eye would betray him. This has never happened before. Palladium Eyes had failed before, but it had never betrayed him. This was a super lunatic who had no regard for life and death. He had always been loyal after working for him, but he didn't expect that he would be beaten by Lin Feng today. His mentality collapsed and he surrendered directly. But I have to say that the strength displayed by Lin Feng was indeed terrifying, and even he was extremely shocked. But that's fine. Once you get here, life or death is not up to you. Kingpin sneered. This suburban manor was his real fortress, and it contained his most powerful power. Even if the so-called Iron Man comes, he will still hate himself here. He has memorized Lin Feng's face. After killing him, this man's relatives and friends will also die. Terror and high pressure are the real secrets of maintaining his rule. After driving for an hour, Lin Feng and Palladium finally arrived outside Jin Bing's huge manor. Palladium had already told him that from the outside, it looked like an ordinary manor, but in fact it had been transformed into a fortress inside. Even if the regular army wants to attack, it will have to pay a high price, let alone Lin Feng alone. At this time, Palladium Eyes was already intimidated, and when he thought of Jin Bin's methods, he felt a little numb, but he did not dare to betray, and the person in front of him was a ferocious beast in human form. As soon as the two of them arrived outside the manor, they heard the sound of helicopters. 3 armed helicopters from a distance quickly approached and soon arrived in front of them. I originally wanted to play this kind of house game with you, but now that you've seen my face, I can't let you go. Lin Feng said with a sneer. At this time, he was slightly surprised. As his strength improved, it must be said that his mentality also changed greatly. When facing danger, he became bolder and his mentality became sharper. He now discovered that it was absurd to ask the weak to have the mentality of the strong. Only the strong could have the mentality of the strong, and the weak had the mentality of the weak. There is no doubt that the current Lin Feng is completely super strong compared to Jin Bing and Palladium Eyes. Facing Lin Feng and the two of them, the armed helicopters started firing from a distance, and the huge cannons began to fire. Palladium Eyes immediately instinctively avoided them. Although he is a master of weapon throwing, in the end he is just an ordinary person. But Lin Feng was different. He didn't even try to dodge. Those machine cannons hit him and only made a tinkling sound. Seeing this scene, Palladium was dumbfounded. Is this a human being? You tell me, this is human. You said earlier that you had the ability of such copper skin and iron bones, how could I dare to cause trouble for you? In previous battles, Lin Feng basically used his speed to dodge these bullets, but this was the first time he showed his invulnerability. Then he saw Lin Feng kicking the broken floor fragments around him like a football, hitting the pilot of an armed helicopter. The pilot was killed, and the stone came out of his body. The entire armed helicopter flew into the air and exploded. The next two were handled in the same way, unable to resist Lin Feng at all. Lin Feng shook his head. After all, it was just the primary template of the motherland. If he had laser eyes, he could directly blast these armed helicopters away. Palladium was completely dumbfounded. The look in Lin Feng's eyes was no longer looking at a monster, but almost like looking at a god. Is this something a normal person can do? If Palladium Eyes originally had some small thoughts and wanted to let the Kingpin get rid of Lin Feng, now he knew that it was no longer possible, so he immediately put away those small thoughts. Let's go. Lin Feng ignored the frightened Palladium Eye, and he didn't know that the combat power he had just shown had frightened a super-villain like Palladium Eye out of his psychological shadow. Under the leadership of Palladium Eye, Lin Feng rushed directly into the manor. He encountered various obstacles along the way, but he was no match for Lin Feng. Even Palladium Eye also joined the battle. If he was a little cautious at first, but now he is completely flat, Lin Feng's fighting ability is not that of a normal human being. Finally, as Lin Feng's cleaning speed became faster and faster, he came to the largest secret room under the manor, which was enclosed by a thick alloy door. This is where Jin Bin rests daily. After this place is completely sealed, only the key in his hand can open it. Palladium Eyes said quickly. He was also a little embarrassed. To be honest, he had personally ordered someone to make this alloy door. Naturally, he clearly wanted it to be so that even if the army used heavy firepower, it would not be able to open it for a while. If we can find some heavy weapons, maybe we can break through it. Palladium said, looking at Lin Feng cautiously. No, Lin Feng sneered and kicked him out suddenly. Boom, the entire alloy door was overwhelmed and fell down on the spot with a squeaking sound, setting off countless waves of dust. Seeing this scene, even though he was prepared, Palladium Eyes still felt as if he had seen a ghost. Palladium couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Is this a normal human being? Is this human? Is this an alien in human skin? Lin Feng's supervision captured Jin Bin's huge mountain-like figure behind the gate, with a horrified expression on his face. Obviously, he probably never expected that Lin Feng could kick him down so simply and roughly. Alloy doors. If he had known that he was provoking such a monster, he might not have caused trouble to Lin Feng at all. No matter how much business he destroyed, would it be more important than being alive? Even he should have run away when Lin Feng decided to cause trouble for him. Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Kingpin asked. Chinese. Lin Feng said calmly. Upon hearing that Lin Feng was of Chinese descent, Jin Bing even switched to Mandarin and said, I have no enmity with you, why are you doing this? No way, who told you to find my traces? I have heard of your cruelty, Jin Bin. It would be bad if my family is implicated, so I decided to end this play with you. A game of house, and you will be completely eliminated. Lin Feng said lightly. Jin Bing was stunned. He had no idea that Lin Feng would have such an attitude and co-authored and destroyed his business worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In his eyes, he was just playing house. As the underground emperor of New York, he has countless people who oppose him, including superheroes. Spider-Woman is just one of them, and so is Daredevil. When these superheroes face themselves, they all have to fight with their lives. It can be said that they all have a strong sense of belief in justice to fight against themselves until now. These people gave Kingpin a headache, but it was just a headache. In the final analysis, they could not really threaten him. But the person in front of him is different. He needs to do his best to deal with it, but in his eyes, it's just a game of house. But thinking about the combat power displayed by Lin Feng at this time, it seems to be justified. Suddenly he felt a little ridiculous. The way Lin Feng looked at him was similar to the way he looked at ordinary people, as if he were looking at ants. In that case, let's have a fight. Jin Bin stared at Lin Feng and said. He took off his suit, revealing extremely terrifying muscles. When Palladium saw Jin Bin in this state, the fear in his heart seemed to have returned a little. He used to serve Jin Bin loyally. In addition to Jin Bin being generous and giving a lot of money, the most important thing was that he was sincere. Was defeated by Kingpin. In terms of combat power, Jin Bin's strength is also at the ceiling level. Soon enough, Jin Bin pounced forward without giving Lin Feng a chance to strike first. This punch could even penetrate the steel plate. But the next second, his punch was caught in Lin Feng's hand, and he couldn't even shake Lin Feng's figure. Impossible. Jin Bin was sweating profusely, and he was still in disbelief. He knew very well how powerful his punch was, but he was no match against Lin Feng. However, the next second, Lin Feng moved, and punched out like lightning, instantly piercing the muscles in Jin Bin's chest. In an instant, the terrifying force shattered his internal organs into pieces. Jin Bin was killed with one blow. His eyes, even to the point of death, could not believe that the gap in strength between himself and Lin Feng was actually so big. After Lin Feng killed Jin Bin with one blow, he also stepped on Jin Bin's head. This was the end. It's not that he's a pervert or has a habit of abusing corpses, it's just that in this world of superheroes, there are all kinds of weird ways of resurrection. Even Kingpin has no record of being killed and resurrected. These people have the aura of supervillains. Although they are not as good as the aura of the protagonist, they are even more difficult to deal with at certain times. In order to avoid future troubles, Lin Feng felt at ease only in this way. It's not that he's afraid of the threat Kingpin can pose to him, it's just that he doesn't want to involve his parents in this world. It's over. Palladium looked at this crisp battle in disbelief. In his eyes, the former boss Jin Bin, who was already the ceiling of human combat power, actually died like this. Can't even struggle a little. For Lin Feng, dealing with the Kingpin was essentially the same as dealing with a miscellaneous soldier. Anyway, they both killed him with one blow. It can be imagined how outrageous Lin Feng's level of inhumanity is now. Lin Feng looked at the mixture of blood and brain splattered all over his body. He couldn't take any more of his clothes. When he was shot by an armed helicopter before, his clothes were in many tatters. Even though those bullets couldn't break Lin Feng's defense, the clothes could still be torn apart. Easily. Now Lin Feng looks like a beggar. But the biggest threat was finally solved. Eliminate future troubles forever. Don't kill me, I'm willing to work for you. Palladium saw the way Lin Feng turned around and looked over, and said hurriedly. It was also the first time that he discovered that he could still have such a bad side. Even when facing Jin Bin, he still had his own arrogance. What can you do for me? Lin Feng said. I can help you deal with many inconvenient things. Although your strength is unmatched in the world, you can't handle everything by yourself, right? Please give me a chance, I won't let you down. Palladium hurriedly said. Faced with the terrifying reality of life and death, he completely let go of his self-esteem. Lin Feng thought about it, and there seemed to be no harm in leaving him alive. As Palladium I said, there were some things he couldn't do, but he couldn't do everything by himself, right? It makes sense. Lin Feng touched his chin and said. Well, how much laundered money does Kingpin have? Do you know the account number? I know. Palladium said quickly, fearing that Lin Feng would feel useless. Most of his assets are shady, but he has laundered $2 billion over the years. They are all stored in bearer accounts in Swiss banks. I can help you find them. 2 billion, that's a lot, Lin Feng said. Although it may not be a lot for super rich people like Tony Stark, the Kingpin is just an underground gang after all, and 2 billion in laundered money is considered good. Most of his assets are still black assets and are shady, and Lin Feng doesn't want to have anything to do with them. You transfer all these 2 billion, and I will give you an account later. But can you control this underground empire left by Jin Bin? Lin Feng asked. Chapter 51. As the emperor of New York's underground empire, Kingpin did a lot of evil, but his existence also objectively restrained the gangs. Even the worst order is order. Without order, ordinary people will only be worse off. Although Lin Feng does not have the ambition of a superhero to take the world as his own responsibility, he does not ignore the lives of ordinary people. I can control it, Palladium Eyes said. It was not that he had never thought about rising to power before, but Jinbin was too terrifying. Whether it was intelligence, brains, or personal strength, he was superior to Palladium Eye. This forced him to bow his head and surrender to Jinbin completely. Now it's just a matter of changing my allegiance to another person. Then take control and don't let the people below make trouble, Lin Feng said. Don't worry, Kingpin rarely shows up. Most things happen in person, so I can handle them, and they won't notice that Kingpin is dead. Palladium Eyes said quickly. That's enough. Let's clean up this mess. It's a mess. Lin Feng nodded. He has officially accepted the power of Palladium Eye. Anyway, he does not need to manage it personally. He can completely act as a hands-off shopkeeper. When he returned to the practice room in New York, it was already late at night. Fortunately, there was no one near the practice room and there was no loss. He had a headache and asked Palladium to find a group of people to deal with the corpses all over the floor, and asked him to find someone to repair the doors and windows overnight. Lin Feng ordered Palladium Eyes for the first time and naturally he dared not fail to do his best. Lin Feng returned to his home, changed his clothes, took a shower, sat down at his desk, and began to record today's diary. It is said that wherever you walk, you will leave traces. Unexpectedly, Palladium Eyes came to the door and had to kill Kingpin personally. I wonder if it will cause changes in the timeline. After all, this old man is a supervillain. He is a model worker. Think about it, how many old enemies do he have? Daredevil, Spider-Man, Punisher, Fantastic Four, and X-Men. Now that I kill this guy in advance, it won't have any impact, right? There is no doubt that Lin Feng's update of the diary quickly alarmed the diary holders. What? Kingpin is dead. Spider-Woman Gwen, who had just rescued a black mother and son from a robber, was sitting on the rooftop of a building, looking at the updates in the diary in her hand, feeling incredible. Ever since she debuted and participated in Chivalry, she has been fighting against Kingpin, because 40% of crimes in the United States, if you trace their origins, you will find that the last person was none other than Kingpin. It is because he controls such a huge underground empire that he can be called the Underground Emperor of New York. Even if it may just be an ordinary roadside robbery, the final background of these robbers may be Kingpin. In this case, she and Kingpin either directly or indirectly fought each other not once or twice. She had fought many times with the gangsters he led and had destroyed many of Jinbing's businesses. It could be said that she knew very well that she had become a thorn in Jinbing's side. But she also knew very clearly how terrifying Kingpin, the Emperor of the Underground Empire, was. He was ambushed by Jinbin several times, and almost died once. Fortunately, he met people from his motherland. It can be said that Kingpin is the most difficult opponent she has ever encountered so far. Every time Kingpin is involved in a crime, she has to be more careful. She just has the spider superpower, but she is not really invincible. As a result, we are now told that Kingpin is dead. The understatement in the diary was a huge shock to Gwen, and she felt a little empty in her heart, as if her goals for many years had been completed by someone else. But she also knew that it was a good thing that Kingpin was dead. After all, she is not some superhero who insists on the principle of not killing, just to satisfy the procedural justice in her heart. Procedural justice is important, and the justice of the result is also important. Everyone from S.H.I.E.L.D. and Tony Stark also rushed over soon after hearing the news, especially Tony Stark, who had been attending a party just now and was now going out to attend related meetings. He'd better have something important to record, Tony Stark said viciously, including the cover girl he just fell in love with. The life of rich people is so dull and boring. Then he saw the contents of the diary projected by Jarvis from home. When he saw the contents, he was slightly stunned. Kingpin, who is this? Based on his class, he may have never come into contact with Kingpin in his life, and he may not even have any business dealings with Kingpin, although the weapons and power used by Kingpin may include products produced by Stark Industries. But he relies purely on technology to make a living, and has no dealings with this kind of underworld. Kingpin, the Underground Emperor of New York, is in charge of a huge underground gang empire. Nick Fury solved his doubts in time. He rubbed his forehead with a headache. He knew very well that although S.H.I.E.L.D. usually dealt with supernatural events, ordinary gangs would not be able to manage them. Otherwise, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. expanded 10 times, it would not be enough. But Jin is different. As the underground emperor of New York, his scale is large enough to attract the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. The core purpose of S.H.I.E.L.D. is to maintain order and stability on the surface, and Kingpin's existence seems to be a good restraint on those gangs, so that those gangs cannot act recklessly, and try to control their influence to the extent that ordinary people feel in a different world. Now that Jin was killed by Lin Feng, it is conceivable that a wave of chaos will soon follow. Countless gangs will probably dance wildly like wild horses that have escaped the reins. By then, they will probably experience another period of chaos. Only then can a new underground emperor be elected, and then order can be restored. For Nick Fury, this situation is also a headache. So when he was doing heroic deeds, his identity was discovered. When Tony Stark heard this, he immediately understood. It is estimated that this unlucky guy named Jin Bing discovered Lin Feng's identity and was killed directly by Lin Feng. From this perspective, Kingpin is really a pure unlucky guy. Lin Feng's strength is unknown to others, but he is still very clear about it. Basically, he has gone further and further without being a human being. To put it bluntly, this Jin Bin is just a gang leader. How powerful he can be, let alone compare with Lin Feng. But so many superheroes are his enemies, so he is quite capable. The widowed sister Natasha spoke. Nick Fury looked at the names of superheroes listed by Lin Feng and fell into deep thought. Because among these names, there are both names he is familiar with and names he is not familiar with. I've never heard of the Fantastic Four or the X-Men. But he knows about Spider-Man. Lin Feng mentioned in his diary that Spider-Man is still a child. In addition, the Punisher knows very well that a guy with a very hot temper, Frank Castle, is a retired captain in the U.S. Marine Corps. Some time ago, he accidentally witnessed a gang lynching incident, resulting in the death of his entire family. Later, he turned completely dark and transformed into a Punisher, using various abilities he learned in the army to punish those gangsters. Especially for the forces under Jin Bin, they were even more merciless. And Frank has always been under S.H.I.E.L.D. surveillance. After all, such a man has super killing skills. Even in Nick Fury's evaluation, he is equivalent to a level 10 agent, comparable to Hawkeye Barton and the widowed sister Natasha. A master of murder at the pinnacle of human combat prowess. When such a person's entire family dies and becomes black again, it is natural to worry whether he will come out to retaliate against society. However, after a period of monitoring, I found that although he killed people profusely and showed no mercy to gangsters, he was not killing people indiscriminately, so he slowly relaxed. As for him killing gangsters, that's outside the scope of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control. He also knows the rest of Daredevil, and can even know his identity accurately, but they are all in the category of street heroes mentioned by Lin Feng, and are not very threatening or destructive. If so deduced, can the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, who were enemies of Kingpin who was easily killed by Lin Feng, were probably not much stronger. As for Tony Stark, there is a somewhat worried look on his face, because in his opinion, this confirms his previous judgment, because he is not in the universe and the Earth he is familiar with, so once Lin Feng loses control, he will really kill people without hesitation. But the good thing is that I paid attention to hiding my identity before, otherwise, my parents would even be implicated. After all, for superheroes, people who reveal their identities, or people who passively reveal their identities, almost never have good results. Tony Stark was really happy when he revealed his identity. But when Dr. Killian sent a helicopter gunship to destroy the entire mansion and almost killed himself and Pepper, I don't know if he regretted it. Thanks to the halo of the protagonist, otherwise it would be really heartbreaking. And after Peter Parker's identity was revealed, it was a tragedy. In order to fix this bug for him, Doctor Strange stepped in to help him deal with it. As a result, it caused a crisis on the level of the multiverse, and even Aunt May died. If he knew this is because his bad words will probably slap him to death. What? Tony Stark's glasses widened. He would be attacked by an armed helicopter in his mansion in the future and almost die. When he saw that Pepper almost died, Tony Stark felt his heart twitch for a moment. A feeling of fear came over me. When he saw his own death, he was not so excited, but when he saw that he almost killed Pepper, his mentality suddenly exploded. Even he himself didn't understand why this was the case, but this feeling really disturbed his reason, and almost instinctively he shouted, "Jarvis, build a new project and transform your home into a fortress." Tony Stark said fiercely, "This guy named Dr. Killian dared to almost kill him in the future, and he must not let him go." "Sir, the relevant process is already underway," Jarvis said. At this time, Tony Stark suddenly remembered that in order to prevent the timeline from turning into the timeline of the zombie Marvel universe, he had ordered the fortress-like modification of his mansion. He was just stimulated by this incident for a moment, so he forgot about it. At this time, he realized for the first time that in his heart, Pepper's status was very extraordinary. Just hearing that Pepper might be implicated in his death caused him to be in chaos. "Even when I analyzed that I might die, I didn't feel this way." Nick Fury glanced at Tony Stark and said nothing. He looked at the content behind. In his opinion, the content behind was the key. First, the identity of Spider-Man Peter Parker will be revealed. As for the consequences of the announcement, you can probably see the fate of Tony Stark at the beginning. Peter Parker's Aunt May will also die after the identity is announced. Refer to Dr. Killian, who sent an armed helicopter to attack Tony Stark. View of the mansion. It is very likely that one of Spider-Man's old enemies knew his identity and took action directly, which ultimately led to such tragic consequences. After all, he also knew that Aunt May, he had seen it before when checking information, and she was still a great beauty who still had charm. As for the consequences caused by this, Aunt May's death turned out to be only the most insignificant part. In his opinion, the real trouble was that Doctor Strange, mentioned later, was trying to help him deal with the leak of his identity. A multiverse-level crisis. He didn't know what kind of crisis a multiverse-level crisis was, but the reference to the existence of other dimensions involved was the huge damage that Dormammu's power could cause. It is entirely possible to judge from a glimpse of the leopard the series of horrific consequences that will result. It can be said that this matter is not a big deal. But with a little judgment, it will take at least a few years, or even more than 10 years. After all, Peter Parker is too young now to become Spider-Man. Then even if his identity is exposed, it will trigger a multiverse-level crisis. It's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this time, he really understood what Lin Feng said, that Doctor Strange was the most dangerous thing. After all, it started with the invasion of the multiverse-level dark-dimensional Lord Dormammu, and then a trouble that was solved casually led to a multiverse-level crisis. Can't afford to offend. No wonder even Lin Feng keeps away from him. So, it turns out that these mages and these superheroes on the magic side usually deal with crises of this level. It seems that it is not without reason that these mages are almost completely invisible on weekdays, because they have to deal with crises of various levels, and in comparison, even if it is the so-called first time to fight life and death on the Earth, World War and World War II were probably just children's play in the eyes of others. Although he didn't want to admit it, he might not be worth mentioning in other people's eyes. Just like he wouldn't interfere with Kingpin's gang empire, because it's not necessary and the two sides are too far apart. Just not on the same level. However, although it is to bring out the incident of 3 spiders in the same frame, the root cause of such a big consequence still lies with Peter Parker himself, but aside from the facts, doesn't Doctor Strange have no reason? Does it mean that if Tony Stark dies, he will not be responsible for this matter? Doghead. Tony Stark saw the new update in the diary, and suddenly his blood pressure was about to rise. Listen, is this human talk? God just ignores the facts. What does it mean that if you die, you will not be responsible for this matter? He is already dead, how can he still be responsible? And everyone looked at Tony Stark with a strange expression, because if Lin Feng was not joking, that is to say, Tony Stark is really likely to die in the future. Facing the strange looks from everyone, Tony Stark could only shrug his shoulders and said in a pretentious manner, "People are going to die anyway. How can anyone not die? Isn't it strange?" Well, he was actually not calm at all. It was just that he had already been excited when he speculated that he might die. At that time, he was tossing and turning and couldn't sleep all night. After all, not everyone can face it with a normal heart when they are suddenly told that they will die one day in the future when they are still young and living well. But whether he is willing or unwilling, this is all in the future. Life has to go on. And he also comforted himself that a lot of things had changed in him, and maybe there would be huge changes in the future because of something. Everyone was immediately in awe, and immediately changed their view of Tony Stark. They didn't expect that he had such an open-minded side. It was incredible. The three spiders in this one are in the same frame. Is it what Lin Feng said before, that the Spider-Man who can travel through the universe met together? Said the widowed sister Natasha. If that's the case, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Everyone nodded. What they could see now was Spider-Woman. It would be so interesting if multiple Spider-Man gathered together. But Lin Feng's wording is weird. What does it mean to attract three spiders to the same frame? This description is very strange. Coulson murmured to himself. There were so many strange things about him. We didn't understand many of the things he said at the time, but we only figured it out later in a certain diary entry. Hawkeye Barton said quite habitually. Obviously, for him, this is not a problem. Anyway, he will know everything he needs to know in the future. Before anyone could think about it, another video appeared in the diary. Discussing the top 3 badmouths in Marvel. How big a crisis can a mouth worse than Tony Stark cause? Laugh. Tony Stark's eyelids twitched slightly. He felt that Lin Feng was targeting him. Yes, it was targeting him. What's wrong with him? He is a serious and aloof person, and at first glance he looks like an aloof male god. How could he be such a talker? This must be a slur. Everyone ignored this and quickly clicked in, wanting to see what was going on with this multiverse-level crisis. The first thing that caught everyone's eyes was a dark scene, accompanied by a pretense of suspenseful narration. We have the inside story on last week's attacks in London, and an anonymous source has provided this footage. Quentin Beck, also known as Mysterio, the moment before his death, I was warned in advance that this video is very cruel. Accompanied by this narration-like voice, there was a slightly urgent voice. I sent the elements into the gap in time and space, but I probably wouldn't survive. Spider-Man suddenly attacked me. He has attack drones and Stark technology. He said that only he can be the next Iron Man. It was the panicked face of a white, middle-aged man with a beard, and he said in horror. Are you sure you want to carry out a drone attack? At this time, the voice of AI Smart Friday appears. This can cause serious damage. Execute them all. Off the screen, the slightly anxious voice of Peter Parker, the little spider, could be heard. This shocking video was exposed on the Daily Bugle website earlier. This is irrefutable evidence that Spider-Man brutally killed Mysterio and sacrificed himself as an interdimensional warrior to protect the Earth. He is the greatest superhero in history. But more than that, this is the real revelation. You better sit down. Then came Mysterio's panicked revelation. Spider-Man's real name is Peter Parker. The screen turned, and a picture of Peter Parker as an adult appeared on the giant screen. As for Magnet, outside the screen, on the streetlights of the bustling streets of New York, Peter Parker finally saw this scene. He shouted in shock. At this time, the director of the Daily Bugle in the picture was still saying with a determined attitude, "That's right, Peter Parker, a 17-year-old ruthless high school delinquent, is the big bad guy who abuses lynching, Spider-Man." In the crowd, MJ was pulled by an Asian man and asked, "Are you Spider-Man's girlfriend?" Finally, little Peter Parker jumped in to help his girlfriend out, but by this time he was surrounded by the crowd. You are actually a child. This person obviously didn't expect that the famous Spider-Man was still a child. You killed Mysterio. Are you an accomplice? There was a commotion among the crowd, and some people even tried to cheat. In the end, Peter Parker had no choice but to take his girlfriend MJ and use the spider thread to leave the scene. Everyone has always admired him and regarded him as a hero, but I will only regard him as public enemy number 1. The scene has reached this point, which is undoubtedly a huge amount of information for everyone. Everyone instinctively stopped the video playback of the diary and began to analyze it, because the amount of information was too large. If it was not sorted out clearly, it felt like there would be no way to proceed. The first is age. According to our previous investigation, Peter Parker should have been born in 2001, so if he is 17 years old in the video, then this scene should have appeared 9 years later in 2017. The widowed sister Natasha said. In other words, I will die at that time. Tony Stark also didn't expect that he would die so early. Now he is only in his 30s. By that time, he will be in his early 40s, and he will be in his early 40s. He died so quickly. For a moment, Tony Stark felt very complicated. By guessing the age of the little spider, he could in turn speculate that his death would be until 2017 at the latest. This was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. I have less than 10 years left to live, what else can I do in such a short time? In vain do you think that you are a genius, but in the end, you can't live longer than ordinary people. But why did he die so early? For a moment, countless thoughts flashed through Tony Stark's mind. The biggest possibility is, of course, death in battle. This is what he has thought about for a long time, because to be a superhero, you often have to work hard. To become Iron Man, he is already prepared to die on a certain battlefield one day in the future. But now he thought of another possibility. In the previous video in Lin Feng's diary, he could see that he was placed in his body by the arc reactor. Then this would also cause a problem, that is, palladium poisoning. This was something he had seen at a glance before. Palladium poisoning is difficult to get rid of. He doesn't know why his future self would put the arc reactor in his chest, but since it is possible, that means there is one more cause of death for him in the future. If so, that would be easier to handle. Because this time he wouldn't hold the arc reactor to his chest unless he was crazy. For a time, he had many thoughts. First of all, it's time. Generally speaking, it should be in 2017, but now another character, Mysterio, has appeared. He also sounds like a superhero. He defeated the elements and banished the elements to the gap in time and space. He sounds like a good man, but now this good man has died at the hands of Spider-Man. Can we think that this Peter Parker has turned dark? Hawkeye Barton said, feeling a little incredible. Is it possible that this is not the Spider-Man in our timeline, but maybe in another timeline, who became dark for some reason? When everyone thinks about it, it seems that it is not impossible. But I am not inclined to this possibility, because looking at the attitude recorded in Lin Feng's diary, it seems that it is a joke, a ridicule, teasing Peter Parker for making a mistake, rather than thinking that he has become a black man. Nick Fury shook his head, then he said, thinking about it, it seems that this is indeed the case. Ever since Lin Feng started writing his diary, he has ridiculed many superheroes, but from the tone of the ridicule, you can probably tell whether he has become a black man. So this also has certain reference value. Now there are two possibilities. Quentin Beck was killed by Spider-Man Peter Parker. Then either Quentin Beck has a problem or Spider-Man has a problem. If they tend to be Spider-Man and Peter Parker has no problem, then it is Peter Parker has a problem. I tend to think Peter Parker has no problem. Tony Stark said slowly. Peter Parker is considered by Lin Feng to be the first son of our Marvel Universe and the eternal protagonist. Since he is the protagonist, he should not be a bad guy. Although it may be the result of a certain timeline becoming dark, but I tend not to think so, but I tend to think that they are competing for the so-called title of becoming the second Iron Man. When Tony Stark said this, he was still a little proud in his heart. Although he was dead, there would still be people fighting for the legacy and the name he left behind, which showed that he was recognized by society. That's good. And one more thing, even if we don't trust our own judgment, I think we can also trust the judgment of Doctor Strange. Although I die in the future, he chose to help between Quentin Beck and Peter Parker. Peter Parker, then I think there is a high probability that Peter Parker is a good person. Tony Stark couldn't help but say. Think about it, everyone, yes, this is the truth. They really don't know what will happen in the future 9 years later, and they can't seem to tell who is the good guy between these two people. Spider-Man is a street hero, but this Quentin Beck is also a warrior from across dimensions in other people's mouths. Not a bad person. But they don't have enough information to judge, and that doesn't mean Doctor Strange in the future doesn't have either, so from this perspective, it's clear who is good and who is bad. And this is obviously what Lin Feng mentioned in his previous diary. Peter Parker exposed his identity, and Doctor Strange will help him deal with this identity exposure in the future. And Tony Stark originally wanted to say, isn't his identity exposed? How big of a deal could it be? But then he thought about how he and Pepper would almost die in the future because their identities were exposed, so he immediately shut up. So we can straighten out the timeline a little bit. A week before Spider-Man's identity was exposed, the London attack occurred, and this incident should have involved the conflict between Spider-Man and the Mysterio, and even caused the death of Mysterio, and then Peter Parker looking for Doctor Strange to solve the problem, triggered the multiverse-level crisis that Lin Feng said. It seems that even in the future, the world will not be very peaceful. Nick Fury said with emotion. Using the short content of this video, everyone analyzed a lot of things. Tony Stark noticed the drone mentioned in it. The concept of drone was proposed very early in this world, but the development progress can only be said to be unsatisfactory. It is one of the future fighting methods that everyone imagines. At present, various major countries are conducting research, but it is mainly in the reconnaissance of drones. Because the target is small and can fly far, it can also be controlled remotely, and does not require a driver or rest. It is a good helper for reconnaissance. But apparently, in 10 years, drones will even be used as a combat supplement for superheroes. Tony Stark has already planned to put the development of drones on the development agenda. Although this thing is far less technological than his Mark suit, it is also a good supplement, especially when facing a large number of enemies. It's very useful. And once he opened his mind, his ideas and creativity kept bursting out. If these drones were equipped with cameras and video recorders, they would be ordinary reconnaissance drones. But if they were equipped with some heavy weapons, wouldn't they become heavy-armed drone? And if they really win the title of Iron Man's heir, then it means that these drones are probably developed by themselves in the future, and they can be used as a reference now. If you copy your own future ideas, can that be called plagiarism? That's called inspiration bursting out in advance. Everyone continued to watch, but it was no longer a coherent plot, but like some kind of trailer. It started with Peter Parker, whose identity was exposed, and his girlfriend MJ lying on the balcony, while MJ was reading a newspaper. Look, this is interesting. Some people think that Peter Parker has the superpower of male spiders to hypnotize female spiders. Hearing this speechless judgment, Peter Parker couldn't help but said, "Okay, stop making trouble." This kind of boring speculation made him feel speechless. He was just a person, an ordinary young man with some superpowers, okay. But in the mouths of these people, he seemed to have become a terrifying monster. "As you command, my Lord Spider-Man," MJ said funny ly, and the two looked at each other and smiled. "Can we just stay up here all day? It's so crazy down there," Peter Parker said very depressed. Everyone thought that his identity had just been exposed, so there was probably a storm outside now. Tony Stark himself knows this very well. When he just announced his identity as Iron Man, a lot of things happened. From home to the company, he was surrounded by various paparazzi inside and outside. Although it was commonplace with his popularity and his usual style of doing things, his attention level during that period at least increased several times. Not to mention Peter Parker, who was originally just an ordinary person. Look at that, he's just a kid in high school. Judging from everyone's current age, Peter Parker can really only be considered a child. As soon as the screen turned, it was a scene of Peter Parker transforming into Spider-Man and swinging between high-rise buildings with his girlfriend. Dear viewers, Spider-Man is actually Peter Parker. The editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle continued to say firmly. He is Spider-Man's biggest anti-fan. The scene turned again, and in a police station, Peter Parker was trying hard to explain to the police, "Listen, the person who killed Mysterio was not me, it was a drone." However, it was obvious that the police did not buy his explanation and said, "But those drones are yours." Obviously, this is a very serious accusation. For the police, what is the difference between killing someone yourself and killing someone with a drone? It's just a tool for committing crimes. It even felt like Peter Parker was insulting their intelligence. Do you feel any relief in your heart? The scene turned again. MJ, lying on the bed, asked. "What do you mean?" Peter Parker asked, looking at his phone. "Now everyone knows, you no longer need to hide or lie." Along with MJ's voice, the scene shifted to a scene where Peter Parker, his friends, and others were surrounded by people. Most of the people's expressions did not look like good expressions. During this period, his reputation was evident. Faced with his girlfriend's teasing, Peter Parker quickly explained, "I want to make it clear that I never wanted to lie to you. But how should I tell others that I am Spider-Man? Everyone knows now, but it's not about me. A lot of people got hurt because of it. The screen kept turning until Spider-Man's friends and even his own Aunt May were implicated. At this point, Spider-Man Peter Parker finally couldn't stand it any longer and made a decision. I have to find a way to fix this. In the picture, the small portrait of Doctor Strange keeps zooming in, which seems to point out the solution. Although it was just a quick look at the scene, everyone almost immediately understood the dilemma faced by the little spider Peter Parker at this time. Especially for Spider-Girl Gwen, she feels the same way. Especially judging from the situation in Lin Feng's diary, she is also one of the variants of Spider-Man. To be precise, it should be normal in a certain universe. Spider-Man is right. In other words, the dilemmas and problems Peter Parker encountered at this time are also the ones she may encounter in the future. Her father, George Stacy, was the police chief of a district in New York City. When she came home, she often heard her father complain. Well, whether it is Iron Man, Tony Stark, or Wonder Woman, vigilantes who are considered superheroes in the eyes of ordinary people are all unrest in his eyes. Everyone is above the law and is better than those criminals. Especially because the activity of these vigilantes has indeed made the security of New York much better, but the more this happens, the more ordinary citizens criticize the police for their incompetence. The number of complaint letters he has received recently has increased several times. She didn't dare think about how she would face her father if her identity was exposed. She continued to read. In front of the New York Temple, Peter Parker came up to her. Before he could knock on the door suddenly opened. Especially when it is still autumn outside, but the sky is full of ice and snow inside, and those who don't know it think they have opened a refrigerator. The sudden opening of the door startled Peter Parker, who thought something had happened. Then he saw two mages wearing winter clothes clearing the snow on the ground. Peter Parker was a bit submissive and didn't know what to say when suddenly a teleportation circle appeared and the Wizard King walked out of it wearing a thick winter coat. He was still holding a suitcase in his hand, as if he had just returned from a trip abroad. When he saw Peter Parker, he immediately joked, "The most famous person in the world, I know." Although this is not the first time I have seen the teleportation apertures of these mages, I have seen Dr. Stephen Strange use them before, but I was still amazed when I saw them now. Especially when I saw these mages using the teleportation aperture to travel freely to every corner of the earth, my envy was palpable. In the picture, the Mage King put down his suitcase, and then continued, "I am the king, don't slip, I have no accident insurance." As he spoke, he moved the remaining suitcases over from the other side of the portal. Seeing this scene of ice and snow, Peter Parker also became curious and asked, "Are you going to hold a Christmas party?" The Mage King said helplessly, "No, it's not, it's just that there is a portal connected to Siberia, and a blizzard blew in." This made everyone feel better. It turned out that it would be a disaster if the mages' abilities were not used properly. In the screen, Doctor Strange slowly flew down, and then complained, "Well, because someone forgot to cast a spell, close the portal." However, as soon as he finished speaking, he slipped and almost fell down, and the high-level mage's character that he had just shown disappeared without a trace. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but smile knowingly, which made those mages pretend to be so funny. "Yes, that's him. He forgot that I have a higher rank." Wong put his hands on his hips and said confidently. "Higher rank," Doctor Strange suddenly said speechlessly. "The Supreme Mage has the highest rank," the Mage King said confidently. When everyone heard the term Supreme Mage, their hearts immediately tightened. The last Supreme Mage was called Ji Yi. Although they had never seen him before, Lin Feng's diary mentioned it a lot. They probably also knew about Supreme Mage Ji Yi. How terrible it is. And this Mage King, judging from the last video of Doctor Strange's battle with Dormammu, seems to be far less powerful. It seems that although the Supreme Mage has the highest rank, he is not necessarily the strongest person. The strength of Ancient One is not due to the position of the Supreme Mage, but because she is ridiculously strong. Hearing this, Peter Parker also rubbed his hands to warm up and said, "I thought you were the Sorcerer Supreme." Hearing this, Doctor Strange couldn't help but said, "In the 5 years since I disappeared at the snap of a finger, he replaced me." "Oh, congratulations." Little Spider Peter Parker didn't know what to say, so he could only say, "If I were here." Doctor Strange couldn't help but wanted to show his respect, but was immediately interrupted by the Wizard King. It will burn this place down. The Mage King interrupted his boasting and complained directly. Then he walked to the edge and said to the two mage apprentices, "You two, keep shoveling the snow." "So Peter, how come I have the honor of meeting you today?" After meeting Peter Parker, Doctor Strange also wondered how Spider-Man could find time to find him. Of course, if he knew how much trouble Peter Parker was causing him today, he would probably shut him out immediately. I'm sorry to bother you, sir, but..." Peter Parker said a little awkwardly, not knowing what to call him for a moment. Although they had fought side by side before, and had fought against alien planets, and could be regarded as comrades sharing life and death, in fact, the two sides were not familiar with each other at all, just not at all. "For show, we once worked together to save half the universe, okay?" Doctor Strange said with a faint smile. As he spoke, he added a fire to the fireplace to make the entire temple warmer. "You still call me husband, that's too outrageous." "Okay, Steven," Peter Parker said immediately. "It sounds weird, but I'm okay," Doctor Strange said. Working together to save half the universe. Everyone's eyes lit up. If Doctor Strange hadn't bragged casually, then it was very likely that an unimaginable cosmic-level crisis had occurred before this point in time. After they solved it, they could even say they saved half the universe. Especially Tony Stark. Just now, he was leaning towards the possibility that his future self would die from palladium poisoning, but now he thinks, is it possible that he died from the crisis mentioned in the article that affected half of the universe? This is the way to die that is consistent with his status as a super genius, rather than dying cowardly from palladium poisoning. "After Mysterio exposed my identity, my life became a mess. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm thinking, maybe you can reverse time and stop him." Peter Parker expressed his thoughts. He wants Doctor Strange to use the Time Stone to reverse time and prevent this from happening. The people outside the screen seemed to understand Peter Parker's thoughts, because they had really seen the scene of Doctor Strange reversing time. That scene really opened up a whole new world to everyone. They had never thought that someone could make him turn back time. The shock in my heart when I saw it with my own eyes was simply unimaginable. At this time, Doctor Strange refused and said, "Peter, we distorted the stability of time and space and saved countless lives. You have become a mess and you want to do it again." When everyone heard this, they felt that there was a huge amount of information. What does it mean? They warped through space before. Although it was to save people, just hearing it didn't make me think it was a small matter. Could it be what Doctor Strange said before, working together to save half the universe from crisis? There are more question marks in everyone's mind, but there are too few information points currently known to make more effective judgments. But there is no doubt that before 2017, there must have been some unimaginable crisis that affected half of the universe. In the end, it was likely that Doctor Strange, a strong man on the magic side, used some kind of magic, distorting the out-of-control stability and achieving the ultimate goal. Hearing Doctor Strange's rejection, Peter Parker quickly said, "It's not just me, many people have suffered from it, and May, Happy, my best friend, and my girlfriend, their futures are all ruined. They didn't do anything wrong, they were just implicated by me." If only he was implicated, he might feel better, but now these innocent people around him are the people he cherishes the most. Being implicated by him, he feels so guilty that he can't control it at all. He may have to live under everyone's supervision for the rest of his life, but he doesn't want his family, friends, and lovers to be implicated by him. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but nod, because they would also have the same appeal. The work they did, they thought they were protecting the people, and even to a higher level, they were protecting human beings. But they don't want to implicate any of their own people because of this work. No one understands Peter Parker's thoughts better than them on this issue. "Well, I'm sorry, but even if I wanted to, I don't have the Time Stone anymore," Doctor Strange said. The time gems in their world were destroyed by Thanos a long time ago, and even the gems used to save them this time were borrowed from other timelines. And everyone's ears stood up because they heard the most critical information. Time gem. It turns out that the green glowing thing on his chest is called the Time Stone. Tony Stark murmured to himself. The Time Stone, as the name suggests, combined with the spell cast by Doctor Strange, can turn back time and even reset time. The power of this Time Stone is about to be revealed. And this is consistent with their previous judgment, that is, time magic is obviously not available to all mages. At most, those mages have a certain degree of magic resistance as magicians. They can sense it when ordinary people are completely unaware of it. Time is reset. This time gem is regarded as an artifact. But such an artifact is gone. Was it worn out, or was it simply lost? And Peter Parker seemed to be very aware of this matter, and said a little uncomfortably, yes. Peter Parker then remembered that the Infinity Stones had been destroyed by Thanos, and even the borrowed ones had been returned a long time ago. It's just that that battle was too tragic, and many times he didn't want to recall it, especially when he thought of that battle, he would think of the man who was like a father to him. Watching him die in front of her, she would hate her own powerlessness many sleepless nights. Thinking of this, Peter Parker opened his mouth and said, "I'm sorry for wasting your time, please forget about this." But just as he was about to leave, Doctor Strange said, "No." The Mage King on the side walked over with his luggage and complained, "He can do it, his memory is very poor." And his words also gave Doctor Strange a very good inspiration, saying, "King, you gave me a very good idea." "What?" The Mage King looked at Doctor Strange and was a little confused, but he realized that something was wrong. Kafko spell. Doctor Strange said the name of a spell. The Kafko spell. Although Peter Parker didn't know what the spell was, he didn't feel it was powerful. "This is just an ordinary forgetting spell," Doctor Strange said. "You can't reverse time, but people will forget you're Spider-Man." "Are you serious?" Peter Parker said very excitedly. "What is a twists and turns?" "This is a twists and turns." "No, no, no, no." The Mage King immediately stopped and said, "That spell is on the dark edge of known and unknown reality, so dangerous." When everyone heard this, they seemed to have fully understood what the problem was. There was no doubt that this so-called spell lingering on the dark edge of unknown reality must be the key to triggering the subsequent multiverse crisis. Doctor Strange in the picture couldn't help but said, "Too dangerous. It wasn't used often before. Do you remember Karma Taja's full moon party? These mages are really good at playing, but they can't control it." Tony Stark complained. At this time, he finally understood why Lin Feng's diary said that although the responsibility lies with Spider-Man Peter Parker, but facts aside, doesn't Doctor Strange have no responsibility? With this frivolous attitude in the face of dangerous spells, even if he doesn't ignore the facts, he still has to be responsible. This is completely unlike the wise Doctor Strange in the previous video. No wonder Lin Feng said that it was completely out of his wits. When faced with Doctor Strange's questioning, the Wizard King said with a confused look on his face, "Don't remember." "That's right," Doctor Strange said immediately, but his reason could not convince the Wizard King. In the end, he could only plead, "Please, King, hasn't he suffered enough?" After hearing this, the Mage King only left one sentence, "Don't drag me into it." Then he opened the portal and left. After obtaining the permission of the Sorcerer King, the Supreme Mage, Doctor Strange took Peter Parker to the edge of a magic table in the basement below the Provincial Point. "Where is this?" Peter Parker asked. "At the junction of the cosmic energy flows where the temple is located." Doctor Strange explained, "We are not the only ones who want to use it. Some of the walls are thousands of years old. An episode of the 1980s album, Lynching Education, was filmed here." With thousands of years of history, everyone's scalps went numb when they heard this. Because the currently known history of mankind can be traced back to about a few thousand years, and it was a few hundred years ago that mankind began to have a relatively developed civilization. Thousands of years ago, although they were not primitive people, they were not much different. There were tribes everywhere. In that era, these mages already existed and established a very brilliant civilization. There was no doubt that everyone was somewhat frightened. Especially, this is New York. As we all know, the civilization of New York was built on the tragic blood and tears of the Indians in the New World. It was so serious that even the United States, where the white left was rampant and reflected every day, did not dare to mention it. Even if they are willing to make concessions to black people, compensate black people for their losses, and allow black people to buy goods for $0, they never mention the tragic history of the Indians. When I think of it, it is history against humanity. In other words, in those days when there were only Indians, these masters had already established a temple here. This shows that they did not choose the address of the temple randomly, one in London, one in Hong Kong, and one in New York. There must be a reason. Peter Parker became nervous when he heard that this basement had such a long history, but Doctor Strange still asked him to calm down and asked him if he was ready. After he confirmed that he was ready, he said, "Nice to meet you, Spider-Man." At this time, everyone was dumbfounded, and wanted to curse in their hearts. It turned out that this spell was such that even the caster would forget about it, so what he said about Kamataja's full moon party was just nonsense. Otherwise, he should have forgotten to drop it. Peter Parker, who heard this, said, "What? What did you say?" Doctor Strange, on the other hand, continued to cast spells in a confused manner, and then said, "The world will forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, including me." Everyone. Peter Parker finally panicked and said quickly, "Can't a few people know?" Peter Parker never thought that everyone would forget about this matter, and quickly tried to bargain. But that's not how spells work. Doctor Strange refused hastily. Making changes when casting a spell is difficult and dangerous. "So my girlfriend will also forget everything we have experienced?" Peter Parker couldn't help but ask. "Then she will still be my girlfriend?" "It depends on the situation. You are Spider-Man and she." Doctor Strange explained. "I hope not." Peter Parker prayed quickly. If his girlfriend only liked him because he was Spider-Man, they would break up immediately. "Okay, let's change it. Except for your girlfriend, the world will forget that you are Spider-Man." Everyone was dumbfounded. It was clear that the Wizard King had just warned that this spell was very dangerous. Once used, there might be other dangers, but Doctor Strange treated the matter so frivolously. What Lin Feng complained about was absolutely correct. He had indeed become wise at this time. Could he be possessed by someone? "Thank you so much, my God, Ned." Peter Parker quickly called out another name. "Who is Ned?" Doctor Strange asked. "That's my best friend, he needs to know that I am Spider-Man." Peter Parker quickly made another request. Everyone feels more and more weird. "Okay, don't make any more changes while I'm casting the spell," Doctor Strange warned. "Okay, I know." Peter Parker said quickly, but before he could finish speaking, he immediately reacted, "But Aunt May should know too." "Stop it." Doctor Strange finally couldn't stand it anymore and scolded him directly. "I was very worried before she found out, but I can't make her sad again." Peter Parker prayed carefully. "My Aunt May?" Peter Parker asked quickly. "Okay." Doctor Strange's tone became increasingly impatient. "Happy." Peter Parker added another name. "No, I'm irritable." Doctor Strange was about to get irritable. "No, I'm talking about Happy Hogan." Peter Parker quickly explained. "He works for Stark and now he's dating Aunt May." And Tony Stark, who was suddenly cued, was dumbfounded. He felt familiar when he heard Happy's name just now, but he didn't expect that it was really him, and he was actually getting involved with Peter Parker's still charming aunt. That was a woman whose figure and appearance were not out of shape even to Tony Stark's point of view, and who was very attractive. Doctor Strange was already very irritated, and he shouted, "Stop talking about it." But even so, Peter Parker added another sentence. "Everyone who knows that I am Peter Parker should remember it." As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful magic storm swept across, and these words even swept directly into different time and space. "Everyone who knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man should remember this." After a while, the magic stopped. Peter Parker saw this and asked quickly, "Did it work?" Facing Peter Parker, Doctor Strange roared, "No, you changed my spell 6 times. 5 times. Peter Parker corrected quietly. "You changed the spell, I said it couldn't work." Doctor Strange roared angrily, "So the spell is completely out of control. If I don't terminate it, disaster will happen." Doctor Strange explained angrily. "Steven, I'm sorry." Peter Parker knew at this time that the problem was big, but at this time he didn't know how big the problem could be. "Call me sir." Doctor Strange corrected him very unhappily at this time. His patience was completely exhausted by Peter Parker. "Sorry sir," Peter Parker said carefully, realizing that he had gotten into trouble. Doctor Strange also came to his senses. The child in front of him was just a child. Was he too demanding of this child? "We experienced that moment together, but we still forget that you are just a child. The problem with Parker is not Mysterio. The problem is that you want to live 2 lives." The longer time passes, the more and more dangerous you will become. Doctor Strange tried to warn him something as an elder, just like Tony Stark before, and then said, "I'm sorry you and your friends didn't get into college, but there's nothing you can do if you try to convince them to reconsider." Upon hearing this, Peter Parker's reaction was, "By convincing them, does it mean that I can call them?" "That's right," Doctor Strange said. "Is this still possible?" Peter Parker couldn't help but said, "So, you haven't called yet?" Doctor Strange said, a little shocked. "When I received the letter, I thought," Peter Parker quickly explained. After hearing all this, Doctor Strange finally became angry and said, "I'm sorry, you mean you came here to ask me to brainwash the whole world without even interceding for yourself first?" "That's what you said." Peter Parker could only try to defend himself, but he was immediately kicked out. The scene finally ends here. And everyone finally understood what Lin Feng's diary said about the multiverse level crisis caused by Peter Parker's nonsense. It is true that he is quite arrogant, but everyone at S.H.I.E.L.D. feels that Tony Stark has the most venomous tongue. His venomous tongue is really heart-piercing. So, what this means is that Peter Parker did so many things because he failed to be admitted to college, and even triggered a crisis in the multiverse. Hawkeye Barton summed it up, and he also thought it was ridiculous and speechless. How can there be such a thing? Isn't this funny? The level of frivolity that triggered the crisis in the multiverse was simply astounding. I think so. It's so embarrassing. He is also vying for the heir to Iron Man. Although I don't think anyone can become the second Iron Man, but he can't even do something as simple as going to college. It's simply you're kidding. Tony Stark said with a venomous tongue. He was also very dissatisfied with Peter Parker at this time. This kid was not good at anything else, and his ability to cause trouble was really ridiculous. Moreover, as a second-generation super-capitalist, he can hardly understand why a person cannot go to college. With the university admissions system in the United States, for him, the only difference is which university he wants to go to, and there is no possibility of being rejected. Now we have the answer to what two unreliable people can do when they come together. For the sake of trivial things, it directly triggers a multiverse-level crisis. Everyone felt speechless. Is there any reason more outrageous than this? No wonder Lin Feng mentioned this matter in his diary jokingly, not completely seriously. Although they can understand that this is just a young boy, he has saved the world with them and is now a superhero. Why does he feel that he has not grown up enough? The psychological quality is completely inadequate. However, why he was rejected by the university is probably directly related to his identity being exposed and being suspected of murder. Tony Stark calmed down a little and felt that he should not pour out too much anger on a child. He said, "It seems that this kid may have a good relationship with me in the future. Even Happy will take care of him. I won't talk about him since he is a child, but I just don't understand what Happy is thinking. Even if I die, will it be difficult to arrange for him to enter a university of his choice with the power of Stark Industries? He won't. Your mind is filled with women, so you can't even think of such a simple thing." As a second-generation veteran capitalist, he instinctively thought that he could stuff money or find connections to get Peter Parker to enroll in school. This was not a difficult task, so why not donate tens of millions of dollars? It's just a drop in the bucket. Isn't this how capitalists arrange for their stupid sons and daughters to enter prestigious schools? Do you know what the value of a capitalist is? Tactical fallback. Of course, he wasn't. He got in purely on his own ability. Everyone also nodded. Based on their understanding of the country's urine, this is indeed the best method. Besides, you, a superhero, can't even get into college. It's so embarrassing. But does this mean that we are all dead? Said the widowed sister Natasha. After all, although we are not as rich and powerful as Tony, it is still very easy to find a celebrity to write a recommendation letter. If he can find someone, he probably won't go to Steven, who is not familiar with him at all. Are you saying that all of us are dead? When everyone thought about this possibility, they suddenly felt a pain in their heads. Just hearing the news of Tony Stark's death already gave them a headache. But now, not only Tony Stark, but also them might also die. In the midst of a crisis that affected half of the universe. Although it is normal for ordinary people like them to die in a crisis on a cosmic scale, it doesn't sound right. It seems that this death list is bigger than we thought. Coulson said. You don't have to think so extreme. Maybe we won't know him in the future. After all, it involves a crisis on the level of half the universe. How can we participate in it? Hill joked at the right time. But everyone did not laugh, especially Tony Stark, who was even more panicked. Could it be that not only himself died in the future, but also Pepper? Otherwise, judging from the information revealed here, he and Peter Parker should have a good relationship. According to normal logic, when he encounters this problem, he should go to Pepper as soon as possible. Just help. With Pepper's abilities and connections, wouldn't it be better to go to Harvard if you want to go to Harvard, or go to MIT if you want to go to MIT? But he didn't, so it's hard for Tony Stark not to wonder if even Pepper had an accident. Just thinking about this made him suffocate. Thinking of this, he secretly vowed to speed up the development of new armors. At least, even if he died, nothing would happen to Pepper. I suddenly thought of something, said the widowed sister Natasha. We thought the problem was that Peter Parker put forward so many conditions, but didn't the magic succeed in the end? So the problem is not that the conditions were added one by one, but the last sentence. You mean, everyone who knows that he is Peter Parker must remember it? No, it should be said that everyone who knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker must remember it. Nick Fury reacted immediately and said immediately. Because there are more than one or two Spider-Man, and even more can form a Spider-Man council. Moreover, there seem to be many Spider-Man named Peter Parker alone, so if it is such a broad concept, it may even affect Spider-Man Peter Parker from other universes. And the kid obviously doesn't know that there are other multiverses. After Nick Fury's explanation, everyone immediately understood what the problem was. This is why Lin Feng's diary helped them expand the concept of the multiverse, so they can truly know where the problem lies. It's not even any other question, it's not adding Aunt May, adding Happy, adding friends, adding girlfriend MJ, but adding the last sentence. As long as there is no last sentence, it will not spread to the multiverse in the end. But the methods of these magicians are really powerful. Just casting a spell can actually affect the multiverse. We don't even have the means to observe it now. Hawkeye Barton complained. Even the multiverse we know is from Lin Feng's diary. Everyone lamented once again that there was a huge difference in strength between the technology side and the magic side. It's hard to imagine that a superhero who was willing to die countless times at the hands of Dormammu just to protect mankind is now so frivolous about these dangers. Maybe it's just as Lin Feng said, he has lost his wits. Widow sister Nada Shah said. Doctor Strange had died countless times at the hands of Dormammu in order to protect humanity. The scene really shocked her, so she felt even more incredible at this time. Anyway, we know about another cosmic-level crisis. Maybe we should think about how to deal with it in advance. Coulson said. Unexpectedly, we don't even know what the crisis is, what scale, what level, and what form. Forget it, I don't think he has any intention of continuing to update the diary. Let's all leave. Tony Stark said a little irritably. Thinking that he was dead and Pepper was dead, he couldn't help but become irritated. Everyone nodded and dispersed their projections. What they learned today also made them equally worried. It turned out that not only Tony Stark would die, but they would also die. Who can feel better? On the rooftop of a building, Gwen also put the diary in her bag, glanced at the brightly lit New York at night, and said softly, "Go home." Lin Feng didn't know that his diary had made people think of so many things, including the sacrifice of many people in the Avengers. A group of smart people can analyze quite a lot from Lin Feng's complaints. But this night will be another sleepless night. The next day, Kingpin's $2 billion were also transferred to Lin Feng's account by Palladium Eyes. It was all clean money, and naturally it would not attract anyone's attention, except for Nick Fury, who had always paid attention to his affairs. No one knows except people. After getting so much money, Lin Feng had gotten rid of the freedom of wealth in the general sense, and his whole mentality had undergone a huge change. If we say that when he first arrived, he was still a little timid, fearing that he would be directly killed by TVA or Ancient One who didn't know where he came from, but now that he has completely integrated the primary template of the motherland, his strength has undergone earth-shaking changes. As long as he does not directly offend those Heavenly Father-level bosses, his safety is greatly guaranteed, and his wealth has been promoted from the second generation of a small rich man to a super rich man. As far as personal wealth is concerned, now he can even compete for the top 100 wealthiest people in the United States. His need for security has been greatly satisfied, and he is no longer completely insecure like he was at the beginning. Now, he has established a financial investment company to use the money he already has to make money. He has no idea of starting a real industry in the United States yet. After all, deindustrialization has been going on for so many years, and this place has long become a hell for the real industry. He is not here to help the American people reindustrialize. Of course, if the lottery can draw some industrial technologies, it's not a good idea. Now that the company has been established and the recruitment notice has been posted, people are waiting for people to sign up. The news that Lin Feng had opened an investment company soon reached the ears of S.H.I.E.L.D., which had been caring about him. Nick Fury found his widowed sister Natasha, then handed her a piece of information and said, "Take a look." He wants to engage in financial investment. Why haven't I seen any relevant information before? Judging from the previous psychological profile, he should have been just an ordinary person in his previous life. He should not have any talent in this area. Natasha, the widowed sister, took a look. Information, took a look at Lin Feng's private investment company. Maple Leaf Investment. Simple and easy to understand, a name that conforms to Chinese naming standards. Don't take psychological profiling as the truth. Many people will undergo some earth-shaking psychological changes after experiencing great changes. This Lin Feng is one of them, especially since he has also traveled through the universe and now he has changed. If he is so strong, the psychological profile of his personality in his previous life will have certain reference value, but it cannot be regarded as the truth. Nick Fury said, his body has been strengthened in all aspects now, and his brain has also been strengthened to some extent. It's not certain that he will become a genius. Of course, the most important thing is that the money was not earned by himself, so he naturally doesn't feel bad about spending it. The initial startup capital of 1 million was given by his family, and the origin of the next 20 million is also very strange. The 400 million we earned was from buying Tony Stark's stocks. Finally, we have found out the source of the last 2 billion. Although the Swiss bank refused to cooperate, we couldn't help it and we still found out. White laundered account from Kingpin. Nick Fury complained. After he took care of Kingpin, he supported Palladium I to rise to power, and by the way, he also took away all the money that Kingpin had laundered over the years. You don't really think he is an honest person, do you? Speaking of this, Nick Fury was very emotional. He almost watched Lin Feng transform from an ordinary person to a boss-level figure bit by bit. Not only the rapid growth in strength, but also the achievements in money. The sub-class jump is ultimately a complete transformation of his mentality. Moreover, he was so envious that his teeth almost shattered because so much money went to Lin Feng. He really deserves to die. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury is considered a high-income earner in the United States. Various subsidies and bonuses start at least $1 million a year, but various annual expenses are also indispensable, just to maintain his high quality. Life consumes a lot of money. This is also the current situation of many so-called elites in Europe and the United States. They look pretty glamorous on the front foot, but they will suffer from the northwest wind as long as they don't get their salary for a month. He has also saved some retirement funds over the years and invested them in the stock market. The investment results can only be said to be very tragic. Unless he is corrupt, there is a high probability that he will not be able to earn a fraction of Lin Feng's current net worth in this lifetime. Then what do you want me to do? Natasha, the widowed sister, looked at Nick Fury, who was gritting his teeth in envy and hatred, and felt the same in her heart. Speaking of the tragic fate of a working man, she was not much better. Her income is not as good as Nick Fury. The income from life and death is not as much as the money some big guys spend on a trip to Lowly Island. No matter what, his mentality has changed significantly now. It can be seen that after his safety needs have been greatly satisfied, he is willing to go out and socialize. You can apply for the secretary of his company and then give feedback on his every move. Nick Fury replied. Fury, are you kidding me? He obviously knows me. He probably knows my appearance and my life story. If I go undercover, he will recognize me at a glance. The widowed sister Natasha said helplessly. At the same time, He glanced at Nick Fury suspiciously. Could this braised egghead really regard Lin Feng as a fool? Of course not. He knows about us and seems to know a lot about our lives, but he doesn't know that we already know about his diary. Nick Fury explained. So he thought we were on the first floor and he was on the second floor. He saw through our identities at a glance, but in fact we were on the third floor. We knew he knew our identities, but we pretended not to. No. Then why are you going around in such a big circle? The widowed sister Natasha said. We now know about certain crises that will happen in the future thanks to his diary, but we can't let him record it whenever he wants, and record whatever he wants, so Tony and I made a plan to record it through various find a way to influence him. For example, if he sees you, what will he say, what will he record, maybe he will be able to know something about you in the future. Nick Fury explained seriously. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.